Chapter 5006. In his suggestion, Yi Qian lifted her head from his warm embrace and gazed at him tenderly. If one day you're the one chasing after my footsteps, will you be proud of me? To have Captain Xia chase after her footsteps one day. She had to admit that this suggestion was really tempting. Of course, Xia Jinyuan answered without hesitation and kissed her forehead. You'll be my glory and my pride for the rest of my life. I won't feel inferior because of this. You don't have to worry. Xia Jinyuan saw through her concern at a glance. He fed her a sufficient amount of reassurance pill on the spot so that she could be at ease and not have any worries. Yi Qian smiled. Because of his arrival, all the darkness in her life had disappeared, and she was always surrounded by light. He was the sunshine of her life, the warmth of her life. The warm sunlight shone gently on Yi Qian's smiling face. Bathed in the sunlight, her beautiful face was like a pearl that had been cleansed of all dust. She was so bright that she was dazzling. My goal now is not to chase after your footsteps, but to work hard to become you chasing after mine one day. It's a deal. It's a deal. Yi Qian left his embrace and raised her right hand. It's a deal. Okay. Yi Qian's handsome face was so bright that even a top artist couldn't draw it. He was so dazzling that even Yi Qian's eyes were mesmerized. Having a handsome man at home is really pleasing to the eye. I'll go through fire and water just to make you smile. Yi Qian, who had become bold, openly flirted with Xia Jinyuan. He was her man, so she felt no pressure to flirt with him. This made Xia Jinyuan chuckle for a long time. Well, it wasn't bad to attract his baby with beauty. Yi Qian told Major General Yang, who almost threw the microphone away. Yi Qian, do you really want to go? Are you willing to do it for 2 years? What about Xia Jinyuan? Did you discuss it with him? Captain Xia asked me to go. He wants you to go. Major General Yang was surprised. This was not his style. When he first found out that Xiaoyi had to report to the Pioneer Battalion and could only go to the Snowfield Brigade after half a year, Xiaoyi had made such a fuss that he would get a headache whenever he heard his phone ring. Now that he was going to go there for 2 years, he was actually willing, still hoping for Xiaoyi to go over. Yi Qian could hear the surprise in Major General Yang's voice. He smiled and nodded. Yes, Captain Xia really wants me to go there. I also want to go there now. After all, not everyone has such a good opportunity. Don't you think so? In these 2 years, she would definitely work hard to return to the team as soon as possible. If she could, she hoped that 2 years of hard work would become 1 year. Major General Yang nodded slightly. This was not a good opportunity for everyone. He was afraid that someone would change their mind halfway through. After thinking for a while, Major General Yang said in a deep voice, Division Commander Kong knows that you can't go there immediately because you're on a mission. Their selection hasn't ended yet. The soonest it will happen is a month later. How about this? You think about it carefully and seriously. After you're sure that you'll go, I'll report it to the Commander-in-Chief. What do you think? Division Commander Kong was not in a hurry to get a reply, so Yi Qian did not ask Major General Yang to report it immediately. The soonest it would happen was a month later. That was good too. Her mission would end in a month, so she could coincide with her schedule. After hanging up, Major General Yang immediately called Xia Jinyuan. He really couldn't believe that the guy who couldn't bear to part with him for half a year would suddenly be willing to part with him for 2 years. Chapter 5007. Faced with Major General Yang's doubts, Xia Jinyuan didn't explain much. He only said, it's never a burden to have more skills. Major General Yang immediately understood why he could accept being separated for 2 years. Then, Xia Jinyuan said, do you think Qing Yao really needs 2 years to leave the airborne force? Major General Yang wanted to write the word convinced in front of him. With Qing Yao's ability to accept things, she really didn't need 2 years. With Xia Jinyuan's explanation, Major General Yang completely believed him. When he reported to Commander-in-Chief Xia, Major General Yang wanted to know if the father and son had a tacit understanding and how well they understood each other. He deliberately asked Commander-in-Chief Xia if Xia Jinyuan would change his mind halfway. They couldn't bear to be separated for half a year and pester me until I was dizzy. Now, They're willing to be separated for 2 years. Do you think they'll treat this as a trivial matter? What if they change their minds later? Commander-in-Chief Xia only pondered for a moment and smiled. No, Sixth Brother won't change his mind easily. The same goes for Xiaoyi. Both of them are very opinionated and won't go back on their words. They couldn't bear to be separated for half a year, but they're willing to be separated for 2 years. I'm afraid it wasn't Xiaoyi who agreed first. Sixth Brother thought it was feasible, and Xiaoyi nodded. Major General Yang really believed that the father and son had a good relationship, although they seemed to be at loggerheads with each other. He specially called to verify, but Commander-in-Chief Xia didn't need to. He could guess who proposed to go to the airborne force. You're right. It was indeed Sixth Brother who proposed it first, and Xiaoyi nodded. Commander-in-Chief Xia glanced at his subordinate who had been with him for more than 10 years and said with a faint smile, "What? Do you want to test whether I know Sixth Brother or not?" "Ha ha. No. I just want to know if your relationship with Sixth Brother is good." "It's very good. There's no problem at all. In the future, when you and Sixth Brother quarrel, even if it looks like you're going to fight each other, I'll be able to watch calmly." "Oh, you also like to worry for nothing." Commander-in-Chief Xia did not blame Major General Yang. They had been old buddies for many years. Although they were at different levels in public, they were actually friends in private. There was no need to take these trivial matters to heart. She pulled out a document and handed it over. "Take a look at this. The headquarters has decided to conduct an assessment for the female soldiers led by Xiaoyi on March 21st. They have also sent a special force of officers and soldiers from the North Face military region to confront them. All the subjects have been drawn up. Take a look and see if there are any problems." It was about Yi Qian. Major General Yang took the document with a serious face and read it carefully one by one. There were a total of 18 confrontation subjects. The major subjects were jungle and desert confrontation, and the minor subjects were fighting and so on. The 18 subjects were further subdivided into 12 sub-subjects, which basically covered all the subjects for the Special Forces assessment. It was obvious how much importance the headquarters placed on the female Special Forces this time. Yi Qian has trained in all these subjects. I don't think there'll be any problems. After he finished reading, Major General Yang was confident in Yi Qian's ability to pass a total of 30 tests. If Yi Qian was fine, then her soldiers would definitely be fine as well. That was how much he trusted Yi Qian. Commander-in-Chief Xia also did not think there would be any problems. What I mean is, do you think we should increase the difficulty? Increasing the difficulty and challenge will be better for Xiaoyi. I'm just afraid that the 20 female soldiers are not strong enough and will not be able to challenge the more difficult subjects. Major General Yang was more inclined to defend what he had achieved. Increasing the difficulty and challenge would be beneficial for Yi Qian. However, if the female soldiers could not complete the tasks, then it was very likely that this female Special Forces unit would not be successfully formed. Chapter 5008. Commander-in-Chief Xia had the same concerns, but he tapped on the document and said slowly, "Go through all the female soldiers' training and assessment again. Then give little Yi a call. Ask her if she has confidence in the 20 soldiers if the headquarters increases the difficulty of the assessment. Increase the difficulty to the point that the Special Forces have to complete the assessment every year." "Yes, sir," Major General Yang answered. About a week later, Major General Yang contacted Yi Qian. Knowing that the headquarters wanted to increase the difficulty, Yi Qian didn't agree immediately. She was also worried about whether the female soldiers could succeed. So she asked, is it because the headquarters thought that the female soldiers should be able to do better, so they want to increase the difficulty at the last minute? Yes, half a year is not a short time. They were already the best in their original units, so I think it shouldn't be a problem to increase the difficulty appropriately. Major General Yang's answer made Yi Qian calm down. You mean, if I don't agree, the assessment will still be carried out according to the original plan, right? Otherwise, they wouldn't have called to ask. They would have directly set the difficulty of the assessment and let the female soldiers face it directly. Yi Qian's quick-witted mind made Major General Yang laugh. Yes, if you think it's not feasible, The original plan will still be carried out. But the commander-in-chief and I hope that the difficulty can be increased. As long as the challenge is successful, it will be good for you and the 20 female soldiers. Yi Jian understood the key point in her heart, but she also had some concerns. The corners of her mouth slightly pursed, and she voiced her concerns. It's about the future of the female soldiers. Major General, I need to ask for their opinion first. If they can accept it, then I have no objections. Okay, you can ask the female soldiers first. Give me an answer tonight. It was 5:40 in the afternoon. Training ended 10 minutes ago, and an answer tonight. She had to ask the female soldiers before the training tonight. Before ending the call, Major General Yang suddenly asked Yi Qian, "You are their instructor and the person who knows their abilities best. What do you think they will choose? I need to hear the truth." "They will." Yi Qian replied with a smile. "They all have a common goal and have been working hard towards it for the past 6 months. They're even more hardworking and resilient than the male soldiers. Although half a year isn't a long time, and I'm not a very qualified instructor, Major General, they have sacrificed so much just to achieve a common goal. They're strict with themselves and complete the difficult training I set every day with high standards. You've seen some of the training, and it's quite humiliating. Those with poor mental fortitude are very likely to leave halfway." But they didn't. They all accepted it and completed every training with flying colors. I admire them very much. They have strong perseverance to get to where they are today. Now, the leaders of the headquarters want to know whether they can succeed or not. Major General, I can tell you that they can. Who said that women were inferior to men? Let's take a good look at how powerful these female soldiers are. Although Yi Qian couldn't accept the more difficult challenges on behalf of the female soldiers, she believed that with the strength of the female soldiers, they were enough to challenge the various subjects of the Special Forces assessment. Major General Yang nodded with satisfaction at her answer. "Xiao Yi, you are a qualified instructor. Your existence let them know that as long as they work hard, they will be able to achieve their common goal. As female soldiers, with a powerful instructor like you in front of them, they have no reason not to work hard." Chapter 5009. Yi Qian had been in the military academy for 4 years, and all the students in her class had looked up to Yi Qian as their role model. Now, all the students in her class were moving towards important positions, and the soldiers quickly accepted and obeyed her. The military was determined to form a female Special Forces unit, and there was no better instructor than Yi Qian. Unknowingly, Yi Qian had left a deep impression on some of the leaders in the military who knew of her existence. Whenever a female soldier was mentioned, they would definitely think of Yi Qian. Hard work would definitely pay off, and Yi Qian was the epitome of this. Major General Yang reported every word Yi Qian said to Commander-in-Chief Xia. Commander-in-Chief Xia made a decision on the spot. Directly increase the difficulty. There is no room for negotiation. If the instructor said it was okay, then it was definitely okay. When they gathered at 7 p.m., Yi Qian told the 20 female soldiers what the headquarters wanted. "This concerns whether your dreams can be realized, so I did not immediately agree. What do you think now? The headquarters hopes that you can agree, and I hope that you can consider it carefully. Tonight's training will be delayed by 10 minutes. In 10 minutes, you will tell me what you have discussed. The headquarters needs me to report your opinions tonight." Yi Qian did not ask Xia Jinyuan. Since the headquarters gave the final say to the female soldiers, then they should make the decision themselves. As an instructor, no matter what the outcome of the discussion between the female soldiers was, she would support it. "Instructor, I want to know what you think. Do you want us to challenge a higher level of difficulty, or do you want us to follow the original plan?" As the instructor, although Yi Qian was young, she was the backbone of the 20 female soldiers. The female soldiers felt that her opinion was very important. "I have always liked to challenge a higher level of difficulty. My opinion is that you can give a try." This was Yi Qian's style, but it was not the way the female soldiers did things. However, her opinion had a great impact on the female soldiers. The extremely cautious female soldiers did not immediately accept Yi Qian's opinion. This concerned all of their dreams, so it was better to discuss it carefully. 10 minutes was not a lot of time for discussion, but at least it was enough for them to consider everything. Yichien did not rush them. He even kept a distance from them to give them some space to discuss. He did not want her presence to affect their decision. In less than 10 minutes, Class Representative Yang Zhen informed Yichien of the results of the discussion. They accepted the challenge. For our training day and night, for our hard work, for our achievements, for the leaders to see our results, for the leaders to know how hard you've worked for us, instructor will accept more difficult challenges. Their instructor told them that the more difficult the road was, the more they would know how strong they were. The more they fell, the more they would know how far they were from their goal. Now, they just wanted to know how far they were from their target. Yi Jian laughed. In the cold night, her black eyes were shining as she stared at all the female soldiers. My soldiers should be like this. The headquarters asked me to inform you in advance that the test will be held from March 21st to March 24th. The opposing soldiers are all male soldiers belonging to the special forces of the Linbei military region. You will face them head-on. I hope you could defeat them and let everyone know the power of female soldiers. Do you have the confidence? Yes, yes, yes. They answered Yi Qian with their strongest voices. March 21st. Let's see how the female soldiers will perform. Chapter 5010. That night, Major General Yang received a reply. Yi Qian told Major General Yang that all the female soldiers would accept a more difficult challenge. They would use their own strength to tell the leaders that they could do it and would do it better. Major General Yang asked the female soldiers if there were any disputes when they learned that the headquarters intended to increase the difficulty. Yi Qian smiled and told Major General Yang that her soldiers were all brave generals. Their bravery was not inferior to men. Major General Yang was satisfied. Whether it was male or female soldiers, the most important thing was bravery. If they didn't have bravery, why would they be soldiers? They should go home early and not affect the other soldiers. In the following meeting, Major General Yang repeated the words of the female soldiers. The leaders of the headquarters all laughed. A colonel laughed and said, I'm not afraid that they will lose. I'm afraid that they will be scared. If they are scared, no one can help them up. It's a good thing that they have bravery and dare to challenge. Another colonel laughed and said, These female soldiers all have a common goal. Now that the military headquarters has given them the opportunity to achieve this goal, they will naturally seize it. With their current confidence, I really think that they can establish this female special forces team. The selected instructor is good. The half a year of training has allowed us to see the progress of the female soldiers. Good soldiers also need good generals to lead them. Without good generals, no matter how good the soldiers are, they will be buried. They won't even be able to fully display their potential. The instructor is good and needs to be rewarded. The words of this colonel made the leaders in the meeting nod. They indeed needed to be rewarded. There's no rush to reward them. Let's see the results of the female soldiers first. If they're all outstanding, we must reward them well. A colonel sitting in the middle smiled and looked at Director Xia. The instructor is good. The female soldiers are good. Then we will wait for the 21st of March. Commander-in-Chief, do you think we should send a message to the North Face military region in advance? Commander-in-Chief Xia, who was sitting in the seat of honor, laughed and said, You from the North Face military region, are you afraid that your former subordinates will underestimate the female soldiers after seeing their confidence and lose? The atmosphere of the meeting was very relaxed. Although Commander-in-Chief Xia was a serious person, when he was angry, his subordinates would hold their breaths and not dare to say anything. Now, he was relaxed and said whatever he wanted to say. Everyone was in a good mood. The main reason was that everything in the army had been progressing very well recently, so he was naturally in a good mood. The senior colonel from the North Face military district smiled even more. It's good that you know it in your heart. If you say it out loud, it'll be bad for me. A colonel sitting opposite the senior colonel from the North Face military region joked, You still want to leak information? You're just going to stay under our noses for the next few days. You don't have to go home. I'll give sister-in-law a call later and tell her that you're going on a business trip for a few days. If he really calls the North Face military region, wouldn't he be telling all of us that he doesn't have enough confidence in the North Face military region? I'm afraid Chief of Staff Lou of the North Face military region will chase after him with a big knife and let him experience the dominance of the old leader. The colonel's teasing made the commander-in-chief, Xia's smile deepen. Until the end of the meeting, all the chiefs had smiles on their faces. It was obvious that they were in a good mood. When the guard saw this, they couldn't help but laugh. It had been 5 years since the idea of forming a female special forces unit was proposed. 8 years ago, there was also a female special forces unit that was formed entirely for female soldiers. However, due to various reasons, it was disbanded and became a pity. Chapter 5011. In 1995, there were female Marines in the ranks of our country's Navy. They became the famous amphibious overlords of the Navy. They were so powerful that they only needed 2 minutes to complete the mission of surrendering. They quickly formed a combat formation, and their speed was not inferior to the male Marines. Since there was a Navy, there must be an Army too. Not only was there a need for an Army, but the Air Force was also quickly established. It could be seen how much importance was placed on female soldiers now. The female soldiers were no longer placed in logistics, communications, and clerical positions. Instead, the female soldiers, who were more tenacious than the male soldiers, were placed in the frontline combat positions. This allowed the female soldiers to show their skills and have the opportunity to compete with the male soldiers. The female soldiers cherished such an opportunity very much, because they never thought that they were worse than the male soldiers. As for the Limbei military region, the colonel from the Limbei military region did not call to inform them. Commander-in-Chief Xia did not need to inform them. So how could he inform them? If he really informed them, just like what the colonel said that day, the old leader would definitely carry a big knife into the capital to teach him a lesson. Moreover, he believed that the male soldiers from Bloodwolf Special Forces would not lose if they were sent to fight against the female soldiers. The Bloodwolf Special Forces is a special forces brigade of a certain army, and it is also a veteran special forces of our country. It is a special force that is stationed at the northernmost part of our army. It is good at fighting in cold areas, highlands, and deserts, and has made countless outstanding military achievements. It had the nature of a wolf and a tiger. The veteran special forces received such a heavy responsibility. To fight against the female soldiers, the captain of the Blood Wolf Special Forces who received the heavy responsibility was stunned for a long time. His eyes widened. Are you kidding? Who's kidding with you? See for yourself. The captain directly stuffed the document in his hand into the hands of the captain. Red words on the top, black words on the bottom, and there's a military emblem below. Who's kidding with you? The Bloodwolf Special Forces was different from the Snowfield Brigade. The Bloodwolf Special Forces was organized in a brigade, so there would be a captain and a captain of a small team. The captain was in charge of the small team. There were 3 squads under the small team leader. This time, the 3 squads of one of the small teams were fighting against the female soldiers. It was the captain who was about 175 meters tall, with dark skin and cold eyes in front of him. He was leading the team. The special forces of the Bloodwolf Troop had participated in countless confrontations, big and small. They might not be able to count them clearly even after a long time. However, they had never fought against female soldiers. Even if he flipped through the history of travel, it was something that had never happened before. It was no wonder that the captain did not believe it. He thought that it was a joke. The red words were written on the top, and the black words were written on the bottom. He knew every word and understood the meaning of every sentence. Looking at the stamp below, there was no mistake. It was indeed a document issued by the military. He really wasn't joking. This, where did these female soldiers come from? After a long time, the division leader could not say that there was a problem with the military's arrangements, so he could only say this. The captain was also curious. I don't know. When you come back, you have to tell me in detail. I also want to know where they came from. 20 female soldiers, all female soldiers. Even the instructor is a female soldier. This is rare. Rare matter? Then you can send another team over. We'll give up the mission of exploring the rare matter. The team leader only felt that it was troublesome. The mission assigned to their team was already troublesome, but it was rare for it to be assigned to another team. The captain did not take the document. He smiled and patted his comrade's shoulder. We had a discussion last night. Such an important mission will be handed over to you. Who asked your small team to go outside these days? Chapter 50:12. Such a heavy responsibility was a foregone conclusion and could not be changed. In the end, the leader of the division would lead 3 squads of male soldiers to find the leader of another division one day and take revenge on him. Bullying him when he was not in the team? No way. Fighting against the female soldiers. All of them were delicate girls with soft skin and tender flesh. Could they withstand a beating? He could probably knock someone out with a single punch. What if something happened? The leader of the division knew that there were only 11 days left before they entered the Gobi, so he did not smile. He could not smile. After the other division leaders in the brigade were avenged by him, they still had to come over and play the role of caring little brothers, coaxing and coaxing until they sent him away. Don't worry about it all day long. Do you think the female soldiers are all delicate? Not at all. The female soldiers of the Marine Corps are brave and good at fighting. Even the male soldiers have to be weak in front of them. Since the military headquarters let our Blood Wolf Special Forces brigade fight against them, do you think the military headquarters did not consider many factors and really let a group of rough men fight against a group of delicate girls? That's right. Why are you in a dead end? Wake up, brother. If they're going to fight against us, do you think this group of female soldiers will be weak? They won't be weak. Your fist can't kill them. Old who? You are afraid that you can kill a female soldier with one punch. Have you never thought that a female soldier can kill you with one punch? Underestimating the enemy will end badly. You better think about how to avoid being beaten by the female soldiers. In the Blood Wolf Special Forces Brigade, even the signalers and clerks were all male soldiers. It was the same for the logistics. No, it should be said that there were no ordinary soldiers in the Blood Wolf Special Forces Brigade. After entering the Special Forces Brigade, even the civilian soldiers could go to the battlefield to kill the enemy. They had several skills and could directly go to the battlefield at the critical moment. In such a troop, without a single female soldier, the male soldiers all had the same view of the female soldiers. How could they fight? They were only afraid that they would beat the female soldiers until they closed their eyes. Although these division leaders were persuading him. In fact, they had the same idea as Captain Who. If they really treated the female soldiers in the same position, would Captain Who was out on a mission at that time, still have a chance? No, they would have snatched it long ago. At the end of the day, the military was the world of male soldiers. It was widely believed that female soldiers were inferior to male soldiers. They had to know their limits when it came to scolding and beating. Unlike male soldiers who could scold and beat as much as they wanted, they could turn scrap iron into fine steel. In the face of his comrade's advice, Captain Who's expression did not improve much. However, he still listened to some words. For example, what if it was a female troop that was good at fighting? They couldn't underestimate the enemy, and when they arrived, they couldn't show a contemptuous attitude of female soldiers can't do it, female soldiers can't take a beating, female soldiers are weak. Since they dared to fight against the male soldiers of the Blood Wolf Special Forces Brigade, they must have a certain level of strength. If he really did not care about the female soldiers at all, he would definitely die quickly. Even though his complexion didn't look too good, he still took this matter seriously. However, looking at the faces of his comrades who had cheated him once, Captain Who felt like sand had entered his eyes, and it hurt. He waved his hand and chased all of them out. Get lost, get lost. I don't need your advice. Are you trying to make fun of me? He didn't even open a window for you. I'm going out to broaden my horizons. You guys just stay here. When I come back, I'll tell you how powerful the female soldiers are. When the division leaders who came to persuade him heard this, they quickly looked at each other. They knew that their comrade, Captain Who, really took this confrontation seriously. They should take it seriously. What if this group of female soldiers was really as strong as the female soldiers of the Marine Corps? First, they wished Captain Who a triumphant return. Chapter 5013. Captain Who of a small team in the Blood Wolf Special Forces Brigade gathered the soldiers in his 3 squads and seriously analyzed the confrontation. He told all the soldiers in the squad not to underestimate the enemy, so as not to be beaten by the female soldiers. Captain Who's attention also made the soldiers in the 3 squads pay attention. The squad leaders of the 3 squads privately reminded the soldiers in their squads that they must not underestimate the enemy just because the enemy was female. Underestimating the enemy would never lead to a good ending. Therefore, the participating Special Forces soldiers all paid attention to this confrontation. They directly put the female soldiers in a higher position than the male soldiers. On the 18th, the 3 squads of soldiers were led by Captain Who to the depths of the Gobi Desert. In addition to achieving their own goals, the female soldiers who fought against the Blood Wolf Special Forces Brigade also had to change the way the male soldiers viewed them. This was very important. Yi Qian even directly told them to make those who thought that the female soldiers were not as good as the male soldiers and that the female soldiers couldn't do big things change their views. They would never dare to underestimate the female soldiers again. Gao Xiao patted her chest, raised her chin high, and said confidently, "If they dare to underestimate us, we will beat them until they remember us for a lifetime. In the future, when they see us, their legs will go soft." It was good to be confident, but if you were too confident, it was a bit weak. Squad leader Yang Zhen said with a headache, "Do you think the male soldiers in the Blood Wolf Special Forces Brigade are recruits? The veteran Special Forces are good at fighting in cold areas, deserts, and the Gobi Desert. Their endurance and perseverance are well known in the army. You want to beat them until they remember you for a lifetime? I think you will be beaten until you remember them for a lifetime." A female soldier interrupted the squad leader's words and added a sentence. It was rest time, so they didn't pay much attention to their words. It didn't matter if the squad leader was occasionally interrupted. Qiu Tong smiled and glanced at Gao Xiao. She slowly said, "If they are remembered by her for a lifetime, then they will be miserable. Maybe she will directly chase them to the Blood Wolf Special Forces Brigade." Suddenly, they all laughed. Even Yi Qian couldn't help but chuckle. "It's okay to chase them, as long as they dare to show up. Are we going to steal their husband? Good idea. Gao Xiao, why don't you pick a tall and handsome one and let him beat you up first? Then you can chase after them." They all laughed and fell into the arms of their comrades. Their laughter was crisp and clear, like the sound of bells in the wind, clean and bright. The day after tomorrow was their assessment date. Tomorrow, Yi Qian would personally escort them into the depths of the Gobi Desert for a 3-day confrontation. After 3 days, the results of the confrontation would be reported to the military immediately. Following that, the military would issue a document on whether or not they were qualified to form a female Special Forces team. As they laughed, someone said, "When the results are out, instructor, will you know before us?" The voice was not very loud, but the female soldiers were all sitting cross-legged, so the soft voice drifted into their ears. The laughter gradually subsided, turning from high to low. The atmosphere gradually became tense until everyone was silent. It was as if there were invisible shackles locking their laughter. Yi Qian didn't seem to notice. He smiled and replied, "When the results are out, you will know before I do." Because at that time, she had already left the Pioneer Battalion and left them, who had been with her for half a year. There was no mention of separation, but the smart female soldiers immediately understood. "You left before the results are out, right?" The squad leader, Yang Zhen, asked carefully. Even her voice was very soft and weak. It became even quieter. All the voices stopped abruptly, like a film that was cut off. It was difficult to move forward. Yi Qian nodded slightly and answered. Chapter 5014. Yi Qian was afraid that saying it would make them even sadder, so he only nodded. "Then, will you still be there when we take the test?" the vice squad leader asked softly, grabbing the hand of a female soldier beside her. She was a little flustered. The atmosphere was so heavy that it was as if a rock was pressing down on everyone's head. There was no smile on their faces as they looked nervously at their instructors. The question that they had been deliberately avoiding was suddenly revealed. Before they even left, they already felt a strong sense of reluctance. Actually, as the time for the test approached, the female soldiers all knew that the time they spent with their instructors was getting shorter and shorter. It was time for them to separate. They knew it in their hearts, but no one said it out loud. It was as if as long as they didn't say it out loud, they wouldn't be separated. As long as they didn't say it out loud, they would still be led by Yi Qian. Now that they said it out loud, their eyes turned red before they could say anything. Why aren't you happy? I've been leading you for half a year. Everyone knows in advance. Now that half a year is up, it's time for me to return to my unit. You guys cheer up. Don't look like you're about to cry. I'm very afraid of people crying, especially what you're afraid of really happens. Before he could finish, Gao Xiao was the first to cry. Really don't be scared, Yi Qian's voice was weak as he struggled to stop her. In the end, more people cried. Yi Qian, who didn't panic at all during the test, panicked when he heard the cries of the female soldiers. The scared Yi Qian asked the squad leader and the two vice squad leaders for help. Oh no, the three of them were also wiping their tears. She was already scared when one of them cried. What should she do? She wanted to cry too. Don't cry. Why are you crying? If you knew this would happen, you wouldn't have cried. Yang Zhen, you're the squad leader. You have to take the lead. Why are you crying too? Gao Xiao, you're crying too loudly. Aren't you afraid of attracting the wolves? The crying Gao Xiao replied in a choked voice, Instructor, there are no wolves here. We can't attract them. Yi Qian, who also wanted to cry, wanted to laugh, but she wanted to escape even more. However, he could not escape. He still had to persuade him. The cries of the female soldiers made some noise and were heard by the patrolling male soldiers. Soon, Xiao Jinyuan also found out that the female soldiers who were resting on the training ground were crying around their instructor. According to the patrolling male soldiers, Instructor Yi was so anxious that he said, If you cry again, I'll leave immediately. Hearing this, Company Commander Zhu laughed out loud and said, These female soldiers are really amazing. They're crying so much that even Instructor Yi wants to run away from home. Xiao Jinyuan rubbed his forehead. He had just said that the female soldiers seemed to have changed into different people. He had been slapped in the face before they even left. Why are you crying? They should have been mentally prepared since they knew about it in advance. Weren't they acting normal these past few days? Why did she start crying so quickly? Crying is right. Crying is normal. I knew these female soldiers wouldn't be able to hold it in and would cry. What do you think, Brother Xia? I was right, wasn't I? Company Commander Zhu wanted to go over and take a look. After holding it in for so long, now that the door of the raft was opened, he was afraid that she wouldn't be able to stop crying for a while. Xiao Jinyuan, who thought the female soldiers would not cry, said, They'll cry for now. When the day comes that they have to leave, they won't cry for long. Company Commander Zhu, I'll leave the important task of persuading the female soldiers to stop crying to you. After thinking for a long time, Company Commander Zhu held his breath and said, I want to go over and say something. If you want to cry, cry all you want tonight. Don't save it anymore. You want me to persuade them? I'd better go further away. Chapter 50:15. Company Commander Zhu didn't dare to show his face, but Xia Jinyuan did. Of course, he didn't go to comfort all the female soldiers. He only comforted Yi Qian. Yi Qian didn't manage to persuade her for a long time, so she just stopped and stayed with the female soldiers until they were tired of crying. When she looked at the time, Yi Qian raised her hand to wipe her forehead. She had been crying for almost an hour. As an instructor, she didn't cry. If she cried in front of the female soldiers, she would probably cry for another hour. The female soldiers, who had cried until their eyes were like rabbits, lined up and left with their squad leader, Yang Zhen. Yi Qian even heard a few hiccups from the team. They turned to leave. Yi Qian, who had been holding back her tears, couldn't help but laugh when she heard the hiccups. They will always be parting. It's just a matter of time. Sigh. She sighed lightly and turned around to look at the tall figure that was walking toward her. Under the starry night sky, The figure that was walking over was tall and upright, and he had an immovable bearing that was like a mountain. When she saw the figure walking over, Yi Jian, whose eyes were red, revealed a wisp of a smile that was even uglier than crying. She didn't dare to cry in front of the female soldiers, but in front of him, she could let herself go. Xia Jinyuan quickened his pace and pulled her into his arms. He sighed softly. Silly. His silly girl made it so difficult for him to hold back. Yi Qian, who threw herself into his arms, took a deep breath and said in a muffled voice, I didn't want to, but when they suddenly started crying, I couldn't hold it in anymore. What about now? He asked with a chuckle. His voice was as gentle as a whisper. Yi Qian, who had wiped her tears on his chest, didn't say anything. She just gripped his clothes tightly with both hands by his waist. Her breathing was erratic. Now, after seeing him, she couldn't hold it in anymore. Then cry. Cry to your heart's content. He could understand that there was always a lot of reluctance to part with a comrade. Cry for a while. Cry for a while. He said gently, his strong hand gently stroking her back, one stroke after another, so that she could cry happily in his arms without any worries. She couldn't suppress her emotions. It was good to cry when she wanted to. Although it was said that it was better to shed blood than to shed tears, it also depended on the occasion and the matter. With him by her side, she could let go of her emotions. She could cry in his arms for as long as she wanted, until she no longer felt like crying. Yi Qian clutched Xia Jinyuan's shirt tightly with both hands to prevent herself from crying out loud. Her tears seeped into Xia Jinyuan's lapel, leaving behind a clump of water droplets. As an instructor, Yi Qian was better at controlling his emotions than the female soldiers. He didn't cry out loud like the female soldiers. Although there were tears, he didn't let himself cry for too long. Xia Jinyuan hugged her sympathetically inside in his heart. Fortunately, her comrades in the Snowfield Brigade could serve until they were 40 years old. It would be a long time before she would be able to face their separation. Yi Qian, who had almost calmed down, buried her head in his chest a few times and wiped all her tears on his shirt. Only when her face was clean did she raise her head from Xia Jinyuan's arms. I'm fine now. She even took a deep breath through her nose. Xia Jinyuan looked down and smiled at Yi Qian, whose eyes were red from crying and nose rubbing. He teased, Did you not cry because you didn't find someone to wipe your tears with before? My chest feels wet even when I'm wearing 3 layers of clothes. Do you think I'm a tool to wipe your tears? No way. Yi Qian sniffed and denied. I didn't want to cry. You told me to cry, so I couldn't hold it in. Chapter 50:16. He was the one to blame. Okay. It's all my fault. Now that you're done crying, do you feel better? As an ordinary man, he gently coaxed his girlfriend. He hugged Yi Qian like a towering tree, shielding Yi Qian from the wind and rain. His arms had always been Yi Qian's harbor. It wasn't the first time her boyfriend cried. In the past, Yi Qian would feel a little embarrassed, but now, she was still a little embarrassed. But she could still speak normally. On the day we leave, let's leave secretly in the middle of the night. Don't let them know. Yi Qian suggested. She didn't want to face separation. If she left quietly, she could still control her emotions and wouldn't have to see the female soldiers sad. Xia Jinyuan's eyes were full of smiles. Okay, we'll do as you say. He originally wanted to leave in the middle of the night and wanted to ask for her opinion. Since she had suggested it herself, he decided to leave in the middle of the night. The female soldiers couldn't bear to leave, and so did the male soldiers. The different male soldiers had already talked about it half a month ago. At that time, the 7-feet-tall rough men's eyes all turned red. It was only because he had a premonition and ordered them to run 3 kilometers that he didn't see them cry. The rough men didn't cry the way the female soldiers did. The female soldiers could cry as much as they wanted, but the rough men wouldn't let themselves cry. They would only grin until their faces were unrecognizable. They wouldn't let themselves cry even if their faces were covered in tears. On the 20th, 2 military trucks left the Pioneer Battalion and headed to the depths of the Gobi Desert. It was also a no-man's land. It was so barren that even during the day, you would feel as if you were the only one in the world. During the 3-day confrontation, you must protect your water source well. The male soldiers of the Blood Wolf Special Forces Brigade are good at fighting in the Gobi Desert. They know the importance of water sources. Once we confront them head-on, the water source will be their first target. They set off 6 days early in the morning and arrived at the assembly point at 9 at night. Sitting in the tents, Yi Qian, as the instructor, once again and for the last time, provided her combat experience to the female soldiers. Yi Qian was no stranger to battles in the Gobi Desert. The combat experience she provided was all her own, which was very useful to the female soldiers. The female soldiers listened attentively, memorizing every word Yi Qian said. You have to choose a good place to rest at night. First, you have to choose a good place to rest. First, you have to choose a good place to attack and defend. First, you have to choose a crescent-shaped terrain with high ground and low ground. Also, you have to have cover at your back. Arrange for 3 people to stand guard. When they were resting, they also needed to arrange for open and hidden sentries. When they were fighting, they also needed to distinguish between the 2 forces. The terrain of the Gobi Desert is complicated, and there are many ways to fight. The dark sentries will always be your reserve force and backup. Do you understand? Understood. 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 Now, let's talk about your division of labor. Gao Xiao, Qiu Tong, Fu Linghua, Wang Yuer. The 4 of you will be the main assault force. It was already late at night. Yi Qian, who was about to leave, was still seriously making arrangements. She knew that the female soldiers in front of her had put in a lot of effort to become Special Forces soldiers and to establish the first female Special Forces team in China. Therefore, she wanted to use her own ability and her own hands to push them forward so that they could realize their dreams. Now, their dreams were close at hand. Their goal was right in front of them. They were just waiting for them to get there. Chapter 5017. The male soldiers of the Blood Wolf Special Forces will most likely ambush you. Instead of waiting for death, why don't you take the initiative to attack? If you discover the traces of the male soldiers and determine their direction of movement, you can attack them directly. Of course, we can't rule out the possibility that they are deliberately baiting you. At this time, you have to first determine if it is a trap or not. Don't act rashly. Gao Xiao, you are the most impatient. Qiu Tong, you are calm. Work harder and watch her closely. Yes, instructor. Qiu Tong replied solemnly. Gao Xiao replied seriously. Instructor, don't worry. I will not be a burden to the class. I believe that you can do better. Yi Qian smiled and looked at her. His eyes were full of encouragement. He then looked at all the female soldiers. Yi Qian smiled and said, I believe that you will do better. Your dreams have already bloomed and your goal is right in front of you. You will definitely take good care of this rare and only opportunity. Her voice was not loud. It was clear and shallow, like a stream flowing in a mountain stream. It was so calm, but also like a waterfall crashing down from a high cliff. It was full of majesty. Looking into her eyes, the female soldiers felt trust. Listening to her voice, the female soldiers felt strength. Hearing every word she said, the female soldiers felt passion. They were trusted, had strength, and were full of passion for the future. They believed that they could do it. 20 hands stretched out. They stacked on top of each other's hands. Finally, Yi Qian placed his hand on top of Yang Zhen's hand. I wish you all success. I wish you all no regrets. I wish you all victory. 1, 2, 3. 21 hands pressed down and released at the same time. They were fighting for their dreams and for their goal not far away. The male soldiers of the Blood Wolf Special Forces Brigade finally arrived at the rendezvous point. They also saw the tents at the rendezvous point. It was midnight. They couldn't drive into the rendezvous point. After the male soldiers got out of the car, Captain Hu strode to the Jeep in front of them. Before he got close, the door of the Jeep opened and a pair of slender legs stepped out of the car. When Xia Jinyuan got out of the car, he heard footsteps approaching. He looked up and saw Captain Hu walking towards him. Company Commander Zhu, who was sitting in the front passenger seat, also got out of the car and strode towards Captain Hu. At noon, Captain Hu and the male soldiers of the Blood Wolf Special Forces Brigade arrived at the Pioneer Battalion. After a short rest, they set off again and only arrived now. Xia Jinyuan did not receive Captain Hu and his men. He had followed them here to pick up Yi Qian and leave. He had agreed to leave quietly in the middle of the night, so naturally he had to come and pick up Yi Qian. Xia Jinyuan looked at the two of them chatting and looked in the direction of the rendezvous point. He guessed that little fox, who knew that he was about to leave, must be keeping watch. The confrontation would begin in a few hours. She would definitely let the female soldiers conserve their energy. She would rather work harder. At 4:50 in the morning, the two sides gathered first. There would be a short talk, and at 5 o'clock, they would enter the depths of the Gobi Desert to begin the face-to-face confrontation for the next day and a half. After the face-to-face confrontation, they would immediately enter the confrontation to capture the other side. Company Commander Zhu, who was in charge of receiving them, led Captain Hu and his men to the rendezvous point that required them to climb over a small hill. After climbing over the hill, Captain Hu glanced at the tents set up at the bottom of the hill. His gaze fell on the female soldiers standing guard outside. Then, Captain Hu realized that the female soldier standing guard was also looking at him, because the laser beam of the other party's rifle was aimed in his direction. The confrontation had not yet begun, but Captain Hu was already shocked. He was discovered so quickly. Chapter 50:18. They hadn't even met yet, but Captain Hu already didn't treat the female soldiers who were about to confront them as ordinary soldiers. They were so far away that even the scouts in the Blood Wolf Special Forces Brigade might not be able to discover them so quickly. And the female soldier who was looking at him was discovered almost at the same time as he did. With such high vigilance, he had to pay attention to this group of female soldiers. He asked Company Commander Zhu beside him, "This group of female soldiers has a big background, right?" "Yes, they do have a little background, but it's not very big. After they get past you, they will have a bigger background." Company Commander Zhu answered with a smile. The red laser of the rifle swept towards them. It was obvious that the female soldiers on sentry duty had already discovered them. Not bad, it was a good start. It was said that there were no weak soldiers under a strong general. With Instructor Ye's strength, it was impossible for him to train a group of weak soldiers. Look, it hadn't even started yet, but the show had already begun. Captain Hu was confused. So how big was it? Was it still small? Can you tell me directly who they are? You see, I've already brought the soldiers here. You don't have to worry about us running away. It was better to know a little about the other party's background. Before he came, he already had the mentality that the female soldiers wouldn't be easy to deal with. The premise was that he used the word probably. If he revealed a little to him in advance, the word probably could be removed. Do you already feel that the female soldiers aren't easy to deal with? Brother, these female soldiers aren't easy to deal with. Otherwise, we wouldn't need the special forces of the Blood Wolf Special Forces Brigade to come out. Brother, let me remind you, don't underestimate them. They're all very powerful. Not all of my soldiers are better than you, but there are a few who are tough. But they didn't have much of an advantage against them. Company Commander Zhu, who had seen the changes in the female soldiers, now sincerely believed that the female soldiers were very powerful. He believed that they shouldn't underestimate them just because they were female soldiers. If they underestimated them, they would be slapped in the face by the female soldiers at any time. When Captain Hu heard this, he immediately erased the word probably not easy to deal with, leaving only probably not easy to deal with. How difficult would it be to deal with them? He had tried to find out. Captain Hu began to look forward to it. They had fought many battles, but they had never fought against female soldiers, especially when they were all female soldiers. Interesting. Captain Hu, who was looking forward to it, secretly despised his comrades who had taken advantage of his absence to vote for which team would receive the mission. A bunch of ignorant fellows. When he returned, he would definitely make them envious until their eyes turned red. Company Commander Zhu did not recognize the female soldier who spotted them at first sight, but Xia Jinyuan, who was accompanying them, did. At such a distance, the sentry only had a vague shadow, but Xia Jinyuan still recognized who it was at first glance. As he had guessed, that silly girl of his family was standing guard. She didn't tell the female soldiers how reluctant she was to part with them, but she always used her actions to tell the female soldiers how reluctant she was to part with them as an instructor. If only the female soldiers could understand her and understand her. When they came down from the hill, Captain Hu whispered to the squad leaders of the 3 squads, "Just now, I heard from Company Commander Zhu that they're not a group of ordinary female soldiers. Each of them has some background. Later, remind the soldiers in the squads not to underestimate them. They must take them seriously." "Understood. Understood. Understood." Chapter 50:19. The squad leaders of the 3 squads nodded. They had also noticed the rifle laser that was aimed at them. Although the red dot didn't hit them, the red dot was still shining in their direction. At the foot of the mountain, Yi Qian looked at the black dot that was gradually getting bigger. The vice squad leader who was on sentry duty with her entered the tent to wake up the female soldiers who had already woken up. When the male soldiers of the Bloodwolf Special Forces approached, the 20 female soldiers stood neatly in the small space in front of the tent. Each of them held a gun and looked solemn, making them feel pressured. They weren't ordinary female soldiers. This group of female soldiers was definitely not ordinary. The male soldiers of the Bloodwolf Special Forces all tensed up. Even their steps became more forceful. The female soldiers were so imposing. How could they fall behind? Yi Qian's gaze never fell on Xia Jinyuan. Her gaze was always on Captain Hu. When she got closer, her gaze slowly fell on Xia Jinyuan. The two of them looked at each other and nodded slightly as a greeting. She knew why he was here. "Instructor Yi, this is Captain Hu for this confrontation. These 3 are the squad leaders of the 3 squads in Captain Hu's team." Company Commander Zhu introduced everyone to familiarize themselves with each other. "This is Instructor Yi from our female squad. Behind her are the female soldiers who will be fighting against the Bloodwolf Special Forces Brigade tomorrow. Come, come, come. I believe everyone should get to know each other." "Hello, hello." Yi Qian and Captain Hu reached out their hands at the same time and withdrew them at the same time. The male soldiers lined up and walked from the beginning to the end to shake hands with all the female soldiers. The confrontation hadn't started yet, so everyone was polite. There was no need to directly confront each other when they met. At the moment, everyone was still in the same army. They would only be separated into friend or foe tomorrow. The male soldiers shook hands with the female soldiers one by one. When they gathered, the male soldiers looked at each other silently. Some of the male soldiers secretly touched the area between their thumb and index finger. This meant that when they shook hands, they could feel the thick calluses between the fingers and palms of the female soldiers. Those were the calluses that only appeared when they held guns often. Although they didn't touch or see the calluses between their thumb and index finger, the calluses at the area between their thumb and index finger wouldn't be thin. It was common for female soldiers to hold spears, but it was rare for female soldiers to have thick spear calluses. The special forces of the Bloodwolf Special Forces Brigade secretly communicated with each other, and so did the female soldiers. They laughed and whispered, "I think I can feel the murderous aura. Don't talk." Xiao Tong reminded her. Gao Xiao was not the only one who felt that way. She felt the same way, and so did the other female soldiers. Their expressions gradually tensed up, knowing that a tough battle awaited them. After a brief introduction, the male soldiers quickly set up their tents. The female soldiers wanted to help, but the male soldiers declined with a smile. Yi Qian then had the female soldiers return to their tents to rest, leaving 2 female soldiers to keep watch while he walked out of the tent. The sentry was the class monitor, Yang Zhen. When she saw Yi Qian come out of the tent, her heart tightened and she couldn't help but call out, "Instructor Yi." She seemed to have sensed something. Yi Qian stopped and stood face to face with her. "The battle will start tomorrow. As your instructor, I can't help you much. You'll have to rely on yourselves." He reached out and started to tidy up Yang Zhen's helmet. As he spoke, he helped Yang Zhen dress neatly. "You're the class monitor and also a veteran. You have to take care of every comrade in the class. If there's anything, you have to deal with it immediately. Don't drag it out and lose your prestige." He tidied up Yang Zhen's clothes, gently pulled her shoulders, and then checked the way Yang Jun held her spear. As the class monitor, you're the backbone of the class. You can't panic when something happens. If you panic, the morale of the troops will be affected. Do you understand? We've already come this far. Tomorrow, we'll do our best. There's no need to feel any psychological pressure. Turn pressure into motivation. Do something and let the military know your strength. As for me, I'll wait here for your news. I'll talk to Company Commander Zhu at the front. I'll come back later. Yang Jun's face was already covered in tears, but she was now a sentry, so she couldn't even cry out loud. She really wanted to ask, "How late will it be if you come back later?" But she didn't have the courage to ask. Chapter 50-20. Yi Jian knew that the class monitor, Yang Jun, already knew that they were going to leave soon. Otherwise, she wouldn't have opened her mouth the moment she walked out of the tent. She knew, and that was why she couldn't bear to leave. After this, the mountains are high and the water is far away. Take care of each other. Yi Qian, who was helping Yang Jun tidy up her clothes, raised his hand one last time and patted Yang Jun's shoulder. He didn't use much strength, but it was powerful enough to give Yang Jun the motivation to move forward. Instructor Yi. Yang Jun's lips trembled as tears streamed down her cheeks. Yi Qian put his index finger to her lips, smiled, and made a shu gesture. Yang Jun, whose eyelashes were trembling, closed her eyes tightly and swallowed the thousands of words that were about to come out of her mouth. Half a year was so short that they didn't seem to have a deep understanding of each other before they were about to part. Yi Qian walked to the side of another female soldier who was standing guard. The female soldier had already cried until her clothes were soaked with tears. She gripped the steel spear tightly in her hands, and all the sadness was in her hands that were tightly gripping the spear, the veins on the back of her hands bulging. Do you still remember that day when you came to report to the Pioneer Battalion? All the passengers on the train were very friendly because you were a female soldier, and there were even children who gave you snacks. Chinku, you will definitely receive more snacks and more kindness in the future, because the people know that as a soldier, you are their guardian angel, and they can rely on you in times of danger. Hold the spear in your hands tightly and stand guard for every shift. You will not fall in the wind and rain, and the female soldiers will be resolute. Half a year flashed by in front of her eyes. Their past interactions had faded into memories that were forever engraved in her mind. From now on, the past would not be repeated. From now on, they might not have the chance to meet again. The female soldier, Chung Ku, gripped the spear in her hands even tighter and nodded vigorously in response to the young and strict instructor who was tidying her clothes. She definitely would. Stand guard properly. When it's time to retire, rest well. There will be a tough battle waiting for you tomorrow. Yi Qian, who had finished dressing the female soldiers, took a step back. The smile in her eyes was like water that contained deep power surrounding the female soldiers. Chung Ku could feel the tranquility and majestic power in her eyes. Yi Qian turned around and left the tent step by step without looking back. After walking about 3 to 5 meters away, his firm footsteps suddenly stopped. His hands, which had been moving naturally with his body, suddenly curled into fists. Behind her, there were not only 1 or 2 pairs of eyes that were sending her off, but also countless pairs of eyes that were sending her off. Salute. The dry and chilly wind in the Gobi Desert made neat and powerful sounds. The 20 female soldiers gathered and stood as usual. This time, they didn't wait for their instructor to come, but watched their instructor leave. Yi Qian stopped in her tracks and raised her head to take a deep breath. Then she smiled brightly. She left empty-handed without looking back, but she raised her right hand and waved in the air. Goodbye, female soldiers who were fighting for their dreams. Xia Jinyuan, who was standing in front waiting for Yi Qian, saw this and his eyes darkened. He sighed softly. He reached out his hand and gently wrapped it around her trembling hands. How can you be so sentimental? We will have to separate more in the future. Every time you put in so much emotion, it will be harmful to your body if your emotions fluctuate too much. He spoke softly, and his tone was full of heartache. Yi Qian's other hand gripped Xia Jinyuan's sleeve tightly. Her back, which was originally straight, was now leaning towards Xia Jinyuan. This is my first real training. Chapter 5021. It was her first real training session. She treated these 20 female soldiers as her own soldiers, and her heart ached for them as her own soldiers. They spent more than 100 days with each other, experiencing joy and pain together. From now on, those days would become a permanent thing of the past, and they could never go back. Just thinking about it made her sad. I thought I was strong enough, but I didn't expect that at this moment I wouldn't even have the courage to turn back. Xia Jinyuan tightened his grip on her hand. As always, whenever Yi Qian was sad, he would always be Yi Qian's support. Every first time is unforgettable, but it's also a necessary part of our life. It may be sad or it may be happy. Regardless of whether you're happy or happy, the memories we share will never disappear. When you look back on them in the future, you'll realize that even sad memories are blissful things. Because we once had a group of comrades in our lives. They left behind the most vivid colors in our limited lives, and they're unforgettable. Life is dull, and the existence of our 7 emotions and 6 desires dye it with color. There's gray, there's bright, there's colorful, there's spring, summer, autumn, and winter, and the cycle of the 4 seasons. We enjoy the color of life, the cycle of the 4 seasons, until we reach the other side of life. When we look back, we'll have no more regrets. Without a doubt, Xia Jinyuan was very good at counseling Yi Qian. With his guidance, Yi Qian's chaotic emotions gradually calmed down, and he unconsciously withdrew his left hand that was grabbing on his Xia Jinyuan's sleeve. Xia Jinyuan was right. Human life was dull, and the existence of the 7 emotions and 6 desires was to add color to life. Whether it was gray or bright, it was because of their existence that there would be no regrets. Let's go. Your journey has ended. Now, it's time for your next journey. Xia Jinyuan let go of his hand. All he could give was support. In the end, he could only rely on himself. His Qing Niao would rely on himself to fly higher and higher, and eventually become the brightest star in the sky. The things she had experienced had become memories. Memories could only stay in her mind, and they could not become obstacles in her way. Okay, Yi Jian nodded. Step by step, she walked in the same direction. Goodbye, female soldiers. She would always remember them, but sorry, she couldn't stop because of them. She still had a long road ahead of her to conquer, and there were many people and things waiting for her to experience. The cycle of the 4 seasons until the end of her life. The slender figure walking into the darkness ahead didn't look back. Even if there were gazes behind her, she didn't look back. She left without looking back, causing the female soldiers' tears to fall like rain. She left just like that. Their instructor left just like that. The slender figure gradually turned into a black until they could no longer see her. Yang Zhen turned around and faced the female soldiers. Comrades, our tough battle is about to begin. Instructor Yi firmly believes that we can do it, and we will definitely be able to realize our dreams. Even if Instructor Yi leaves, she will definitely know everything about us. Now, wipe away the tears on our faces, adjust our emotions, and prepare for the tough battle that is about to begin. We can't let Instructor Yi down. Understand? Understood. Chapter 5022. Orderly voices answer Yang Zhen. After a while, the female soldiers with red eyes wipe away their tears. They will not let their instructor down. They can do it. Captain, the female soldiers are in high spirits. We have to be careful. The male soldier from the Blood Wolf Special Forces Brigade, who had been paying attention to the female squad leader, said in a low voice. The sudden departure of the leader stimulated the female soldier's fighting spirit. It's strange. The confrontation is imminent. Why did the instructor leave at the last minute? Is it a strategy? Isn't he afraid of losing morale? The male soldiers from the Blood Wolf Special Forces Brigade, who didn't know much about the female soldiers, were confused. There were still a few hours before the confrontation began. The instructor who was supposed to stabilize the soldiers' morale had left. What kind of strategy was this? Captain, who didn't know either. The instructor has left, but the company commander is still here. How can morale be broken? Although Captain who didn't know, he said, the instructor is only in charge of training. The real backbone is still the company commander. With the company commander around, the female soldiers will naturally look for the company commander if they have any problems. Company Commander Zhu expressed that he really didn't care about anything. He was just here to be a mascot. Well, actually, he was also here to stabilize the soldiers' morale. The mascot smiled and sighed in response to Yi Qian's request. Instructor Yi, let me tell you the truth. Actually, I hope that the female special forces will succeed more than you do. Although our land has always been dominated by the male soldiers, there are some things that are better for the female soldiers to handle. Now that the lives of the people are getting better and better, they have more and more money to spare. Tourists will come to take pictures in the desert from time to time. We male soldiers are all straightforward and rough people. You know that the army is all about toughness. If something is wrong, it's wrong. There's no room for you to talk so much nonsense. Therefore, sometimes the tourists are quite unlucky when they meet us. With the female soldiers around, they will definitely solve these problems in a gentler way. You know what happened last year? It was because we didn't have any female soldiers that we almost had an accident. Don't worry. Since I'm here, I will definitely keep an eye on the female soldiers and spur them on. If there are any problems, I will definitely deal with them in time. I won't delay them. Sai, actually, I also want you to stay. I just don't understand why the military wants you to leave at this time. Isn't this making the female soldiers lose their backbone? Weaning isn't that urgent, is it? Xia Jinyuan coughed softly. Company Commander Zhu's last sentence was a little rough. He was worried that Yi Qian would feel awkward if he heard it. Yi Qian felt a little awkward when he heard this. He smiled and said, I can understand why the military chose this time to let me leave. They mainly wanted to see how the female soldiers would react. It doesn't matter if I, the instructor, am present or not. If their strength is limited to my presence, then things will be troublesome. Once I leave, it will be perfect if I can stimulate their potential and bring it out better. If that's the case, then, as the company commander, I can rest assured. Company Commander Zhu said as he looked at his watch. It was getting late. It's getting late. You and Captain Xia have to take turns driving. I'll drop you off here. If there's a chance, let's meet again. I don't know if there's a chance, Company Commander Zhu added sadly in the end. Yi Qian nodded. Of course there will be a chance. If there's a chance, I still want to come back and visit the female soldiers. I hope that Company Commander Zhu will let me go when the time comes. I don't want to be rejected by Company Commander Zhu because of the trouble I've brought to the camp over the past 6 months. Chapter 5023. Although it was a joke, it was also a way to leave an opportunity for the future. What if she came back to visit the female soldiers in the future? Company Commander Zhu heard this and said very seriously, I will welcome you from 10 miles away. I only hope that Instructor Yi can come to the Pioneer Battalion to instruct more often. Company Commander Zhu was speaking from the bottom of his heart. He really hoped that Yi Qian could come to the Pioneer Battalion more often. After sending Yi Qian to the car, Company Commander Zhu put one hand on the car door and leaned forward to say, when you have time, please come back to the Pioneer Battalion to visit your old comrades. Even though we have only known each other for half a year, you will always be a member of the Pioneer Battalion. No matter when, the Pioneer Battalion will always welcome you. As long as there is a chance, I will definitely come back. Yi Qian also replied very seriously and made a promise for the future. The Pioneer Battalion was the first unit she served in after graduation. Just as Company Commander Zhu said, the Pioneer Battalion was her old unit. Her old comrades were here, so she would definitely come back. The car started. Xia Jinyuan waved goodbye to Company Commander Zhu and drove back with Yi Qian. Company Commander Zhu stood on the gravel in deserted Gobi Desert and watched the car leave. He saluted and said goodbye to his old comrade of half a year. Yi Qian kept staring at the rearview mirror. Even though the stars were dim, Yi Qian could still see Company Commander Zhu raise his hand to salute. She gently closed her eyes and didn't dare to look anymore. Captain Xia, are we still going back to the barracks? After a long time, Yi Qian calmed down and asked the man who was steadily driving, "Our luggage is still in the barracks, right?" Xia Jinyuan steadied the steering wheel and quickly glanced at the person sitting next to him. He sighed and said, "Our luggage is in the back of the car. We've already left our old unit." After all, Xia Jinyuan was much more experienced than Yi Qian. In addition, he had a group of brothers who would go through life and death with him, waiting for him to return. Therefore, he was much less reluctant than Yi Qian. Although there was reluctance to part, it was far from the point of wanting to cry. Yi Qian was stunned. After a long time, he said in a daze, "My luggage is already packed." I don't even know. When did you pack it for me? Why didn't you tell me? I thought I would go back to the camp to pack my things." He spoke in a daze, as if he couldn't quite accept it. After he finished speaking, Yi Qian leaned back in his seat. He turned his head and looked out the window in a daze. The mountains outside were undulating, and the Gobi Desert stretched on endlessly. Outside was the Pioneer Battalion, where she used to be, but she had already left. "Sleep for a while. For safety reasons, we have to take turns driving." Xia Jinyuan, who felt sorry for her, decided to find something for Yi Qian to do. She had a strong sense of responsibility, and having something to do would distract her. Yi Qian, whose emotions were fluctuating, turned his head and immediately raised his hand to look at his watch. It was still 10 minutes to 1 in the morning. "How many hours do we have to drive? Directly to the airport? What about the car? Will there be someone at the airport to pick us up?" 14 hours. The car will be parked at the military station and then set off for the airport. "Okay, I'll take over at 3. 3 o'clock was the time when she wanted to sleep the most. If she slept now, Captain Xia could have a good rest at 3. Normally, Xia Jinyuan would definitely extend the time, but now, he nodded and said, "Okay, I'll wake you up at 3 o'clock sharp. I've been driving since I came here from the camp." "Then I'll drive now. You rest." When Yi Qian heard this, he immediately changed his mind. Chapter 5024. Xia Jinyuan only wanted to distract Yi Qian by letting her drive. He didn't really want her to drive. Hearing this, he objected. "No, you're still very emotional right now. The Gobi Desert's terrain is complicated, so you need to calm down. Go to sleep. I'm still in good spirits. I'll be fine if I drive for another 2 hours." Yi Qian had always cared about her man. Hearing this, she nodded obediently and immediately closed her eyes to fall asleep. She fell asleep very quickly. Xia Jinyuan slowed down when he heard the sound of breathing beside him. Then, he used his right hand to gently stroke her head. "You are too sentimental. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. People who were too emotional would always get hurt." Yi Qian, who had already fallen asleep, didn't hear Xia Jinyuan's sigh. She had to hurry to sleep so that she could take over the shift at 3 o'clock. At 3 o'clock, Xia Jinyuan woke Yi Qian up on time. His eyes were bloodshot, but he was in good spirits. Yi Qian woke up from her deep sleep and jumped out of the car. She let the cold wind blow on her head to make her more awake before getting back into the car. Xia Jinyuan was relieved to let Yi Qian drive the car. He got in the front passenger seat and chatted with Yi Qian for a short while before immediately closing his eyes and falling asleep. Yi Qian didn't wake up the man who was sleeping soundly even when the sky started to turn green. Following the predetermined route, she drove steadily from the Gobi Desert to the sentry post. When she stopped the car and took out her ID, she got out of the car to cooperate with the sentry. She didn't want to wake Xia Jinyuan up. After the sentry finished the inspection, he told Yi Qian where to get on the recently built road. He also took out water and dry food from the simple sentry post and put them in the car. Then, he raised the pole and let Yi Qian through. This was the first sentry post that Yi Qian passed. After passing 2 more sentry posts, they finally walked out of the no-man's land and out of the restricted military zone. At this time, the sky was completely bright. It was already 8 o'clock in the morning. Dawn came late in the Gobi Desert. By the time they saw the sun, it was already 6:30. Now that the sun had climbed up, the sun was shining brightly. It was a very good day. After driving for 5 hours straight, Yi Qian was a little tired. Up ahead was a paved road. Yi Qian stopped the car, rolled down the window, turned off the engine, and got out to rest for a while. A bottle of water, a few pieces of yak beef jerky, and a few biscuits were Yi Qian's breakfast provided by the sentries at the outpost. She stopped the car at the foot of a hill. Yi Qian, who was holding breakfast, quickly climbed up the hill. Now, the female soldiers and the male soldiers of the Blood Wolf Special Forces Brigade had already started fighting. They did not know how the battle was going or whether they had won. Yi Qian, who had climbed up the hill in a short while, faced the west of the Gobi Desert, where she could not see a group of women soldiers fighting for their dreams. She sat down, opened the bottle of water, and drank it in one gulp. The cold water stimulated her throat and brain, making her mind clearer and calmer. After eating a few biscuits, she heard the sound of climbing footsteps behind her. Yi Qian turned around and smiled at the young and handsome officer climbing up. She patted the ground and said, "Captain Xia, let's look at the scenery together. I've been here for so long, but I haven't seen the scenery of the Gobi Desert properly." Every time they passed the sentry post, the man woke up. Before he could climb up, he was stopped by the girl, smiling brightly in the sun. The sun was so bright, but it was not as bright as the smile on the girl's face. At this moment, all the beautiful things in the world could not compare to her smile. "Come up quickly. The sun will be too bright if you stay any longer." Yi Qian, who was still smiling, patted the ground hard again and urged, "Are you still not awake? Don't be in a daze. Come up quickly." Chapter 5025. Yi Qian, who was sitting on the top of the hill, smiled at the young military officer behind her. Her smile was brighter and more dazzling than the sun. It was like the rising sun, breaking through the shackles of darkness and ushering in a new day with the most beautiful posture. Xia Jinyuan, who was standing still, also smiled. He knew that his girl had walked out of her depression and was facing the coming days with the best attitude. These days, Yi Qian's smile was a little rare. Even when she smiled, there was always a hint of melancholy between her eyebrows. Xia Jinyuan's heart ached when he saw it. However, this was something that she had to go through. No matter how much he tried to persuade her, she still had to rely on herself to walk out of her depression. Only when she walked out of her depression could she truly walk out of her depression. As her boyfriend, no matter how much he tried to persuade her, it was useless. Now that she had walked out of her depression, Xia Jinyuan felt relaxed. If you want to see the rising sun, you have to go a little earlier. It's too late now. The sun has already risen. The golden light is the most beautiful when it leaps out of the sky. Xia Jinyuan, who was walking again, walked over with a smile and sat down next to Yi Qian. His long and powerful arms naturally wrapped around Yi Qian's shoulders, allowing her to lean into his embrace. Her head rested on his shoulder as they watched the desert scenery together. Yi Qian also leaned into his embrace naturally, snuggling into the arms that had always given her strength and guided her forward. The scenery in front of her was lush and full of vitality. Looking at it, she even felt that it was bleak. However, in the bleakness, there was a tenacity that was unyielding and unafraid of the hardships of the world. After looking at it for a long time, her mood unknowingly became exceptionally relaxed. The undulating Gobi scenery stretched to the end of the horizon. Seeing the brownish-green shrubs growing in the desolate mountains, unafraid of the harsh climate of the Gobi Desert, her mood improved. Her dark eyes narrowed slightly, and her expression became more peaceful. "It's really beautiful," she whispered. "Tenacious beauty. They're just like them, unafraid of the harsh summer and winter." "Who are they?" Xia Jinyuan knew who she was talking about. He put his arm around her shoulder and said gently, "They're not the most beautiful. If there's a chance, I'll take you to see the scenery of the Gobi Desert. Desert poplar trees that have been dried for thousands of years. The sky is filled with yellow sand, and the golden leaves are shining. The wind from Tian Shan mountain blows past. There's the smell of snow and sand. The golden leaves of the poplar trees are falling. Smoke rises from the desert, and the sun sets over the long river. This is the most beautiful scenery." As the man beside him talked about the scenery of the Gobi Desert, Yi Qian's mind began to picture the unchanging desert. She had been to the border a few times. The scenery was right in front of her eyes, but she didn't stop to appreciate it. Firstly, he didn't have the time. Secondly, he didn't think it was beautiful at that time. Now that he thought about it, he felt a little regretful. He wondered if the female soldiers would stop to admire the scenery around them. He would probably be like her, with no time and no sense of beauty. If he didn't put in the effort to appreciate it, how could he discover its beauty? Do you know what the spirit of the poplar trees is? He tilted his head and kissed Yi Qian lightly on her forehead. Yi Qian looked up at him and shook her head gently. The spirit of the poplar trees? She had never heard of it. Xiao Jinyuan thought for a while before continuing. The poplar trees die for thousands of years. They don't fall for thousands of years after they die, and they don't die for thousands of years after they fall. After they rot, their roots will still be firmly rooted in the desert and fix a sand pile. Even if they're no longer alive, they can continue to protect the sand pile where their roots spread out. They will tenaciously protect it until the roots rot away. Chapter 5026. Xiao Jinyuan knew about the poplar tree spirit when he was an intern at a company in the border area in his sophomore year. At that time, an old company commander from the Snowfield Brigade personally told him about it. It was also because of this old company commander that he chose the path of a Special Forces soldier. There's actually such a thing? Yi Qian was very curious when she heard this. She couldn't help but leave his arms and sit up straight. Then what's the poplar tree spirit? Xiao Jinyuan pulled Yi Qian back into his arms. Sit properly and listen to me. Don't move. It's good to snuggle up and talk to each other. In a few days, it will be time to separate. It'll be difficult for them to see each other again after she joins the airborne troops. Right now, it's only the two of them, so they have to make the best use of their time to get along. To prevent Yi Qian from sitting up straight again, Xiao Jinyuan hugged Yi Qian's shoulders even tighter. More than half of Yi Qian's body fell into his arms. He wished he could just pull her into his arms and make her sit on his lap. Lieutenant Colonel Xia, who has always been a man of action, thought of something and acted quickly. He didn't immediately tell Yi Qian what the poplar tree spirit was. While Yi Qian was caught off guard, he grabbed Yi Qian's waist with his amazing arm strength and easily pulled Yi Qian onto his lap. Yi Qian felt like she was a rag doll in his arms. Her body was lifted into the air, and in the blink of an eye, she was in his arms. Before she could catch her breath, she was already sitting on his lap. Her back was against his chest, and her waist was tightly hugged by his strong arms. It was as if he was afraid she would run away. Xiao Jinyuan, whose wish came true, laughed. You should have hugged me like this a long time ago. Aren't you afraid I'll make your legs numb? Yi Qian, who was leaning into his arms, pursed her lips and laughed. Don't need me to carry you down when the time comes. If my legs are so numb that I need you to carry me, I won't refuse. When it came to talking, Xiao Jinyuan had always been the king. Yi Qian quickly admitted defeat. After adjusting himself to a comfortable position, Yi Qian, who admitted defeat, asked him what the spirit of the poplar tree was. Xiao Jinyuan spoke slowly. His low and pure voice was like a zither being played. It was probably tainted with the desolation of the Gobi Desert, and his voice became particularly deep. The spirit of the poplar tree refers to the spirit of enduring hardships and fighting. The female soldiers you brought out have the spirit of the poplar tree in them. They won't fall until the last moment. Even if they fall, their roots are deep and their mission continues. You can't bear to part with them, but their roots are already in the Gobi Desert. As long as their roots are there, they will be there, and their spirit will be there. When you come back one day, you will see them stronger than they are now. They will be like the poplar trees that have taken root in the Gobi Desert, flourishing with leaves and protecting the country. Yi Qian, who had already given up on leaving, heard this. His eyes sparkled. Yi Qian, who was resting on his shoulder, smiled slightly and asked, Captain Xia, you want to tell me that they will win, right? Without waiting for Xiao Jinyuan's reply, she continued, They will win, and they will win beautifully. The Special Forces of the Bloodwool Special Forces Brigade are very strong, but how can the soldiers I brought out be weak? Her tone was extremely proud and confident, which made the smile in her delicate eyes even more dazzling. After half a year of harsh training, each of them is a top-notch character. How can they lose? The spirit of the poplar tree. Yes, they have the spirit of the poplar tree in them. They won't lose. How can the soldiers she brought out lose? That kind of confidence and even a little bit of rare arrogance really made Xia Jinyuan love her very much. The girl he loved deeply rarely showed her arrogant side. Now that she suddenly showed it, Xia Jinyuan only felt that his heart, which was always fluttering in front of her, was now thumping hard. Chapter 50:27. Xia Jinyuan, whose heart was racing, tightened his arms around Yi Qian's waist even more tightly. It was as if he wanted to embed Yi Qian into his body before he would stop. Xia Jinyuan, whose breathing was even faster, turned his head and kissed Yi Qian's smooth forehead. "Oh, Company Commander Zhu, and I never thought that the female soldiers would lose." After half a year of rigorous training, we all saw the improvement of the female soldiers. Would they be willing to see a group of female soldiers who refuse to admit defeat? Although the difficulty of all the competition subjects has been increased, the military did not blindly increase it. They increased the difficulty based on the female soldiers' usual training content and the results of their assessments. You hope that the female soldiers can win, and you hope that they can work together to realize their dreams. The military does the same. They spent so much effort to select female soldiers with strong comprehensive abilities from various units in order to successfully form a female special forces unit. How could they treat them so casually? Yi Qian, who was still in good spirits after driving at 3 o'clock, smiled even more. She felt proud. That's right, they will definitely win. After they win, they will probably sit on the top of the hill like I am now, watching the sunrise and sunset, and enjoying the scenery of the Gobi Desert. Xia Jinyuan deliberately observed Yi Qian's expression carefully. When he confirmed that there was no trace of worry between her eyebrows when she mentioned the female soldiers, he raised his eyebrows and smiled. That's not necessarily true. You didn't appreciate it that time either, did you? That's different. They have a lot of people. As long as someone takes the lead, they will definitely enjoy the scenery around them. I've seen the scenery of the Northwest. When I return to the unit, I should have a chance to see the scenery of the Gobi Desert that you mentioned. Yi Qian's eyes sparkled as she rested her head on his shoulder and spoke softly. She had a yearning look on her face. The beauty of Jiangnan's water villages, the beauty of the Northwest's yellow soil, the beauty of the Gobi Desert, we will probably all go there. Yi Qian's happiness made the smile in Xia Jinyuan's eyes deepen. The beauty of Jiangnan is a little difficult. We can go there on our honeymoon. The beauty of the yellow soil in the Northwest is right in front of us. We will see the beauty of the Gobi Desert together. Thinking about the years ahead, Yi Qian was filled with anticipation. The female soldiers had their own paths to walk, and she also had her own path to walk. There was no need to be too sad. There would always be a time when they would meet again. After chatting for a long time, Yi Qian became more and more indifferent, and the last trace of sorrow in his heart dissipated. She smiled sweetly, her beautiful eyes filled with longing. It was rare for Xia Jinyuan to be so relaxed. He held his beloved girl in his arms and talked about the great rivers and mountains of his motherland. They talked about the places he had been to, the people he had met, the things he had encountered, and why he had joined the Snowfield Brigade. The old company commander didn't ask me what my future plans were until I was about to return to school. He asked me if I wanted to go to a better unit to train and if I wanted to become the king of the kings of soldiers. At that time, I was upset with old man Xia. He thought that even if I got into the military academy, I would just be a bastard who wasted the country's food. I wanted to fight for my pride, so when I heard that there was such a good place and that the king of the soldiers, I was excited just thinking about it. So I agreed without hesitation. Xia Jinyuan had never told Yi Qian how he knew about the Snowfield Brigade. Now that he mentioned it, Yi Qian listened with great interest. It was a true story, and the plot was full of ups and downs. She had to listen carefully. Chapter 5028. Yi Qian listened attentively, afraid to miss a single word. Xia Jinyuan saw that she was so interested and said excitedly, "Later, the old company commander introduced me to Major General Yang, and then took me to see Old Man Xia. You don't know, but when Old Man Xia saw me, his face was like a dye shop. The old company commander kept saying good things about me, and said that I was a good seedling. In short, there was nothing wrong with me. Old Man Xia thought that I was a bastard. When he heard the old company commander praising me nonstop, he held it in until he was about to pass out. He asked the old company commander if I forced him to say that. The old company commander was brave. If it weren't for Old Man Xia's high position and military rank, the old company commander might have punched him. Later, the old company commander said that he really had the urge to hit him, but he held it in. He was afraid that if he punched him, he would feel good at the time, but he would be in trouble later. The year I met you was also the year I left the company. After that, I was parachuted into the Snowfield Brigade and took over the position of captain. Not long after I joined, I started to carry out missions both overseas and domestically. Have you noticed a problem? You and I have carried out countless missions, but we have never been to the south. Hearing this, Yi Qian thought about it carefully and realized that it was true. The roads they had traveled the most were the borders and the Yun province. They had never traveled to the south, especially the Jiangnan area. Xia Jinyuan was surprised. He had served for many years, but he had never been to the south to carry out a mission. He immediately decided that the Jiangnan water town would be their honeymoon. Yi Qian didn't think too much about it when he mentioned the honeymoon. Now that he mentioned it again, he was even a little impatient. Yi Qian, whose ears were slightly red, stole a glance at him and whispered, "Honeymoon? We don't even know if there will be a honeymoon vacation. Even if there is, we don't know if the troops will be recalled midway. You're thinking so far ahead." Xia Jinyuan was already focused on the honeymoon and didn't hear Yi Qian's muttering. "Where do you think we should start? Fireworks in Hangzhou in March? There's heaven above and Suzhou below. We can start from Suzhou and Hangzhou. Wu Town, Water Village, Wu Peng Boat, and pick lotus flowers along the way. Since we've passed by Suzhou and Hangzhou, let's change to another place and continue. It's not a bad idea to climb mountains. With our physical strength, it won't be a problem to climb the 4 famous mountains." As he spoke, Xia Jinyuan suddenly lowered his head and kissed Yi Qian's cheek. "What should I do? I really want to get married soon. I really want to go to the south with you." At this moment, the two of them had already put aside all their worries, and they only had each other in their eyes. He kissed and nudged Yi Qian until he felt ticklish. As he dodged, Yi Qian smiled and pushed his head away to prevent him from causing trouble again. "Captain Xia, think about it in your heart. I just graduated and am still young. There's no hurry to get married. You still have to wait. We have to be 24 years old when we get married. I'm only 22 years old this year." A basin of cold water was poured down, instantly drenching his heart. Xia Jinyuan, whose heart was cold, bit Yi Qian's tender earlobe in revenge. The tip of his teeth purposely rubbed and sucked. "Little heartless girl, don't you know how hard it is for me to hold it in?" As he spoke, he pulled the person sitting on his lap harder into his arms, making her sit on his lap. "Do you feel it? Is it hard for you to hold it in?" Yi Qian was so stiff that he didn't dare to move. Yes, she felt it. It was already like this. How could she not feel it? Chapter 5029. Yi Qian, who could feel it, was very worried. In the past, she could still use her young age as a shield. But now, she was old, an adult, and a university graduate. Her best shield had lost its effectiveness. What should she do? The worried Yi Qian did not even dare to move. What else could she do? She had to put out the fire first. We're in the wilderness. Calm down, Captain Xia. Bear with it. Continue to bear with it. She stammered. She would only panic in the wilderness. What if something happened? Should she resist or not? What a difficult choice. In the wilderness, she couldn't possibly be executed on the spot. The inexperienced Captain Xia probably did not have the hobby of fighting in the wilderness. At this moment, Yi Qian's heart was like a small boat swaying with the waves in the vast ocean. One moment, the boat was about to capsize, and the next moment, it was about to sink. What should she do? What should she do? It was such a big feeling. His breathing sounded like a wild beast panting in her ears. The scorching hot breath was like fire, roasting her and making her feel extremely uncomfortable. Captain Xia, why don't you put me down first and we can walk? They were clearly talking about serious matters just now. Why? Why did the atmosphere change so suddenly? Yi Qian, whose neck was red, suggested softly. She did not dare to disturb him. If that doesn't work, why don't you run a few kilometers to vent your anger? She suggested again. It was all out of conscience. Holding it in was harmful to the body. Xia Jinyuan did not accept her suggestion. He was also helpless. Why did his body feel the more he spoke? Sigh. He could not blame his body for not living up to expectations. Just think, an old virgin chicken that hasn't even eaten meat at the age of 30. How can you expect it to live up to expectations? It had been abused for more than 10 years. It felt very wronged. It was just that. Xia Jinyuan laid his head on Yi Qian's shoulder and groaned painfully. I've already wronged it for more than 10 years. I can't bear to let it suffer anymore. Cough, cough, cough. Yi Qian's neck was not red. She felt that her entire body was red. She didn't want to. Then, tell it that the location is wrong and let it cool down. What else could he do? Coaxing. Yi Qian used all his energy to coax her. Xia Jinyuan was in even more pain. His hands were no longer tied around Yi Qian's waist. Instead, he gradually began to climb up. As he did so, he complained, I can't coax him. He won't listen to me. No, it doesn't listen to me. Her voice was so soft that it made Yi Qian's heart tremble. It was irresistibly sexy. Yi Qian's hands stopped him from climbing up, and she clenched them tightly. Gritting her teeth secretly, she began to exert more strength in her lower abdomen. Gently, she persuaded him again, if you can't do it the soft way, let's do it the hard way. Or run. Run. As soon as the words came out of his mouth, Yi Qian, who had been sitting on his lap, jumped out of Xia Jinyuan's warm embrace like a rabbit out of its nest. At the same time, he did a forward roll and instantly distanced himself from the man whose eyes were red from holding himself back. Xia Jinyuan was speechless. He looked down at his empty arms, then at the figure running down the hill. He gritted his teeth and said, when the time and place are right, don't even think about getting out of bed for 3 days and 3 nights. He leaped up and chased after the figure in front of him. The location was really not right. As for him, he did not expect that he would suddenly have such thoughts. They were clearly talking about business, but after a while, he suddenly missed it and forcefully suppressed it again. He needed to go to the andrology department for a thorough examination to see if there were any problems with his various functions. Chapter 50-30. Xia Jinyuan thought as he chased after her while taking deep breaths. As the figure in front of him got closer and closer to him, the gentleness in his eyes grew stronger. Finally, he caught up with her and hugged her as they laid down on the cold, gravelly ground. This time, the two of them did not hug each other. They had learned their lesson from their predecessors, so they should take it easy. The surroundings were very quiet. After running for 3 kilometers, the two of them rested their heads on their hands, closed their eyes, and adjusted their breathing with a smile on their faces. Their hearts became calmer and calmer until there were no more distracting thoughts. Without speaking, the two of them lay there quietly, as if they could lie there until the end of time. After some time, Yi Jian was about to fall asleep. There was a shadow above her eyelids. She slowly opened her eyes, and a handsome face was reflected in her black pupils. Have you rested enough? He asked with a smile. His voice was so gentle that Yi Qian couldn't help but slowly close her eyes again. She smiled lazily and said, No, I just want to take a nap before we continue. Her lazy appearance made Xia Jinyuan's eyes melt. He pinched her nose gently with his slender fingers and pinched her so hard that she couldn't breathe. If we sleep here, the people at the military station will think that we've lost our way. Come, I'll carry you to the car. You can sleep in a car. When you wake up, the results of the female soldiers' competition this morning will probably be out. Yi Qian, who was pinching her nose and breathing through her mouth, suddenly opened her eyes. Her eyes were so clear that one could tell that she was in good spirits and didn't feel sleepy at all. Can I know the results of the female soldiers? Not only did she not feel sleepy, she even sat up straight and stared at Xia Jinyuan. You're not lying to me, right? Can you really know? Lie to her? Xia Jinyuan raised his head and flicked her forehead. When have I ever lied to you? He really didn't. Yi Qian smiled and lay on Xia Jinyuan's back. She hugged his shoulders with both hands and swayed her slender legs with his steps. She was extremely happy. It was so good that she could even know the results of the female soldiers. Xia Jinyuan, who was carrying her to the car, kept smiling. What was happiness? Happiness was when he carried her on his back and walked until the end of time. After getting into the car, Yi Qian let himself fall asleep. They still had to continue driving. When they woke up in the afternoon, they would be able to take over the shift. They would also be able to know the female soldiers' results. It was killing two birds with one stone. The military jeep drove onto the asphalt road built by the Army Corps of Engineers. From the desolate Gobi Desert to the asphalt road, where vehicles occasionally passed by, Xia Jinyuan rolled up the windows that were originally rolled down to prevent the car horn from waking up Yi Qian. At 9 o'clock in the morning, the temperature of the sun gradually rose. The female soldiers with rifles in their hands lay motionless on the ground. In front of them was a chest target and an alarm clock that rang every 5 minutes. Another 10 minutes passed, and the alarm clock let out a sharp ding-ding-ding sound, destroying everyone's willpower and disintegrating everyone's perseverance. As Company Commander Zhu listened to the ringing of the alarm clock, he swore countless times in his heart. Damn it, I swear that I will never buy an alarm clock for the rest of my life. I don't want to hear an alarm clock for the rest of my life. It's too King torturous. Hang in there, female soldiers. You have to hang in there. There's still an hour to go. You've already endured for 4 hours. There's only 1 hour left. Don't let the first 3 hours go to waste. As he listened to the ringing of the alarm clock, Company Commander Zhu's gaze continuously swept across the female soldiers. He clenched his fists tightly until all the ringing stopped. Then, he slowly took a deep breath and relaxed his fists. Chapter 50-31. While Company Commander Zhu was paying attention to the female soldiers, he was also paying attention to the male soldiers of the Blood Wolf Special Forces Brigade. Seeing that the male soldiers were all very steady, he muttered in his heart, "Damn it! Hurry up and drop a few for me. Hurry up and drop a few for me." He couldn't say it out loud. Captain Hu of the Blood Wolf Special Forces Brigade had been watching the battle from the side. Unfortunately, the male soldiers of the Blood Wolf Special Forces Brigade didn't do as Company Commander Zhu wished. The female soldiers persisted, and so did they. They didn't move at all, as if they were one with the ground. No matter how strong the wind and rain were, they wouldn't move. The veteran special forces wouldn't lose so easily. Moreover, they were fighting against female soldiers. If they lost to them in the first round, wouldn't they be ashamed? Since the female soldiers persisted, the male soldiers didn't dare to let themselves fall. Captain Hu of the Blood Wolf Special Forces Brigade was no less mentally active than Company Commander Zhu. Occasionally, he would glance in the direction of the female soldiers with a cold expression. The corners of his mouth were pressed tightly together, and the atmosphere around him was a little gloomy. These female soldiers weren't just pretty vases. They were all well-trained and had a certain level of strength. Take the gun control training as an example. Ordinary soldiers trained for about half an hour to an hour, while the special forces trained for at least 2 hours. Under normal circumstances, they would train for more than 2 hours. At the same time, there would be several interference factors around them. This was to allow the soldiers to perform normally in a noisy environment without being affected by the environment. Ordinary soldiers could control their guns for an hour, but the female soldiers who were fighting against them had controlled their guns for 3 hours. Their expressions didn't change, and they didn't look tired at all. It was obvious that their daily gun control training was done according to the standards of the Special Forces. This group of female soldiers wasn't ordinary. They should be a special force of the 76th Army Group. As a soldier from the Northwest, he didn't know that the 76th Army Group had established a special force of women. No wonder Company Commander Zhu said that the female soldiers weren't simple. How could the Special Forces be simple? There was only one male Special Force soldier in 10,000 miles. After all, there were more male soldiers. What about female Special Forces soldiers? There might not even be one in 10,000 miles. Captain Hu took a deep breath. The sun shone on his dark face, but it couldn't melt the coldness on his face. After glancing at the female soldiers, Captain Hu turned to look at Company Commander Zhu, who had the same cold expression as him. Chapter 5032. Captain Hu cursed in his heart. Just as he was about to say something, the alarm that could make people panic rang again. This time, it wasn't just an alarm. They needed to complete the chest target shooting under the alarm. For hours of recoil time was up. The red signal flag was raised high and then waved down. 20 male soldiers and 20 female soldiers fired at the same time. 40 rifles fired at the same time. The deafening gunshots had to cover up the alarming alarm. Company Commander Zhu and Captain Hu's faces tightened. They didn't say anything else and focused their gazes on the shooting range. It's starting. The female soldiers loaded the bullets at a steady and fast speed. They didn't experience any instability or tremors in their hands that would affect their accuracy due to the long period of recoil time. The male soldiers who were trained in the Special Forces were much more mentally stable than the female soldiers. After the first shot, they calmly aimed and fired a second time. Their speed was the same as before and didn't slow down at all. A smile flashed across Captain Hu's eyes. He calmly said to Company Commander Zhu, "The soldiers of my team are all good shooters. Their accuracy is quite high. After 6 hours of recoil time, 16 out of 20 of them shot perfectly." In other words, the female soldiers might not be as good. Company Commander Zhu wasn't afraid. The final assessment for the female soldiers wasn't to surpass the male soldiers. The final assessment was to assess the overall performance of the female soldiers. Even if they lost to the male soldiers in a certain subject, as long as their accuracy met the standards set by the military, they would still pass. Company Commander Zhu's smile didn't change in the face of Captain Hu's provocation. The veteran Special Forces soldiers really live up to their reputation. This is a good opportunity for our female soldiers to learn from each other and make up for their weaknesses. Captain Hu was probing and provoking, really couldn't figure out what the Pioneer Battalion was planning. They weren't from the Special Forces and didn't care about their results. Then what were they after? Could it be that what this loach company commander in front of him said was true? That they just wanted to see how strong the female soldiers were? Captain Hu didn't get any useful information after a long time. Instead, he made himself confused. He bit his cheek and decided not to ask any more questions. He wouldn't get anything out of him no matter how much he asked. Fine, he shouldn't waste his energy. Just let the brothers do their best. The soldiers of the Bloodwolf Special Forces Brigade would not give in just because the opponent was a female soldier. As long as it was a competition, there would only be a winner and a loser. There would never be humility. The female soldiers did not need to be modest either. After half a year of bitter training, they had long been reborn. They were many times stronger than when they first arrived. Now, they were only one step away from their dreams. They didn't dare to relax in the slightest. They were like sea swallows soaring in the sky, fearlessly meeting the blade. Yi Qian, who had just woken up from his sleep, jerked his body slightly. He opened his eyes and sat up straight to look behind the car. Behind the car was an unknown number of kilometers into the vast Gobi Desert, and she was getting further and further away from there. "Did you dream?" Xia Jinyuan, who was driving, quickly glanced at Yi Qian, who was looking back, and then looked at his watch. It was 11:26 in the morning, and the female soldiers had finished the second round. Yi Qian retracted his gaze and sat up again. He rubbed his dizzy temples, closed his eyes, and answered, I had a strange dream that I can't remember at all. I don't know what I dreamt of. She must have had a dream related to the female soldiers. Xia Jinyuan only thought about it in his heart and didn't say it out loud. Chapter 5033. You probably haven't rested well. There's a service area downstairs. Get out of the car and rest for a while. Eat something while you're at it. Xia Jinyuan, who was looking straight ahead, yawned and said, I'm a little hungry. I need to eat something to fill my stomach. Speaking of hunger, Yi Qian suddenly felt a little hungry too. He nodded and said, Okay, I'll drive after you eat. You rest. The journey was long, so the two of them had to take turns driving. When they arrived at the service area, Yi Qian looked at the line of cars and suddenly laughed. Seeing the cars without camouflage and the people in casual clothes, I suddenly feel like I've been separated from the world for a long time. It was true. Ever since Yi Qian joined the Pioneer Battalion, he had never walked out of the Gobi Desert. The barracks were filled with soldiers in camouflage. Now that he suddenly saw people in casual clothes, Yi Qian was not used to it. He even felt that it was a little strange. There were very few service areas on the Northwest Highway. There was only a very simple service area after a few hundred kilometers. Every car that passed by would enter the service area to rest. Now that there were many cars, many passengers got out of the cars to rest. Some were on road trips, some were going to and from various cities, and some were going into the Gobi Desert to participate in construction. Those from Tiannan were all resting and replenishing their food at the service area. Xia Jinyuan, who was following the car in front, was amused by Yi Qian's strange expression. There was a teasing smile in his eyes. How do you feel about returning from a primitive society to a civilized one? I'm not used to it. Yi Qian smiled and sighed. It's only been half a year, so I'm really not used to it. Captain Xia, do you feel the same way? Officers and soldiers who stayed in the army for a long time would feel the same way as Yi Qian. Officers and soldiers in remote units would feel the same way. Xia Jinyuan also felt the same way in the past. He found a place slightly further away from the service area and parked his car. He smiled and said, I did before, but I got used to it. You'll get used to it in the future too. Sometimes you don't even want to go back to the bustling city. You just want to go back to the army as soon as possible. Oh, no wonder you left in a hurry every time you saw me. So you didn't even want to see me. After getting out of the car and taking a few steps, Yi Qian, whose dizziness had dissipated a lot, deliberately found fault with her. To think that I miss you for a long time every time you leave, and it takes me a long time to get used to it. Xia Jinyuan chuckled. After I got to know you, I hated how short my vacation was. Even if I only had 2 days off, I still wanted to fly over to see you. I have collected 7 calendars. Excluding the year when I first met you, from the following year onwards, every time I saw you, I would draw a heart on the calendar. I will show it to you when you return to the team. This small gesture made Yi Qian smile sweetly. She looked at him with watery eyes and pursed her lips into a smile like a flower bud waiting to bloom. When she returned to the team, she had to take a good look at those calendars. She had to count how many times she and Captain Xia had met over the years and how many days they had spent together. She wanted to see if there were any discrepancies in her memories. Yi Qian was a female soldier with an incredible memory. As long as she tried to recall, she could also recall every day they had spent together. The car was parked a little far away. In order not to damage their military image, the two of them, who were wearing camouflage uniforms, did not walk hand in hand. Instead, they walked side by side. When they passed by a row of cars, Xia Jinyuan paused slightly and walked away without leaving a trace. Other people did not notice his pause, but Yi Qian did. Her eyes followed him closely and looked at the row of cars, but she did not find anything. What's wrong? She asked softly, looking a little wary. Chapter 5034. Yi Qian chuckled. That's probably because there's someone in the car. If they really wanted to steal something, they wouldn't have shaken the entire car. They should have left as soon as possible. None of the car windows were broken, and there were no whistles around. Xia Jinyuan also felt that he had been too cautious, so he only paused for a second. The two of them took a few more steps forward, and the sound of a sliding door came from the car behind them. It seemed like there was some danger in the car, and the people in the car were escaping in a hurry. Something was wrong. The two of them, who were talking and laughing, turned around at the same time and ran in the same direction. They saw a gray figure sweep past them and run towards the highway. Yi Qian saw the running gray figure, and her pupils constricted. "It's a prisoner's uniform," she shouted. "I'll chase after it. You go and check the car." Xia Jinyuan also saw that the running gray figure was wearing a prisoner's uniform. The word prisoner was emblazoned on the back of the uniform, and it was eye-catching. He quickly chased after it with his long legs, while Yi Qian turned a corner and found the car from which they had heard the sliding door. It was an escort car that couldn't be seen from the outside. All the windows were covered with anti-reflective brown film, so it was impossible to see inside from the outside. Yi Qian quickly jumped into the car, and the scene in front of her made her expression change drastically. She quickly opened the first aid kit that she had casually brought with her and took out gauze to cover the throat of the policeman who had his throat slit. The policeman, who was bleeding from his neck, saw the person who had saved him. His eyes lit up when he saw the army's desert camouflage uniform. He covered his neck and pointed outside. "Go after the felon. My comrades are already chasing after him. Don't say anything." Yi Qian covered the policeman's bleeding neck, and the corners of her mouth were pressed into a straight line. The main artery had been cut. There was no way to stop the bleeding. Looking behind, Yi Qian's eyes flashed with anger. Behind them, there was another policeman who had his throat slit as well. She had no way of saving him. She covered the officer's bleeding neck with one hand and used her other hand to take off her jacket. She pulled out the dagger beside her thigh and cut 2 strips of cloth from the camouflage uniform. She wrapped the cloth strips around the officer's neck. "Do you still have the strength to chase after the felon at the brink of death? Could he cover it himself? Please cover it up. You must cover it." Yi Qian lifted the policeman's right hand and placed it on his neck. "Cover it. You must cover it." After saying that, she went to the back and prepared to use the same method to resuscitate him. Just as she stretched out her hand, her fingers suddenly retracted as if she was holding on to something heavy. The policeman in his early 40s had already left. His eyes were wide open. Although his pupils hadn't collapsed, he was no longer breathing. Yi Qian felt a stab in his heart, but he didn't have time to feel sad. Footsteps came from outside. Yi Qian restrained the anger in his eyes and retreated. He reached out again to cover the neck of the policeman whose main artery had been cut. As the footsteps approached, Yi Qian looked up. 2 policemen walked over with another prisoner in tow. Their eyes met, and one of the policemen yelled. They saw what was happening in front of them. They saw their comrade lying in a pool of blood, and they saw blood continuously flowing out of his neck. When the prisoner saw this, his eyes flashed with crazed joy. While the other policeman was rushing into the car, his hands and feet were cuffed, he suddenly used all his strength to slam into the policeman who was holding him. Yi Jian pulled out a dagger and threw it at the prisoner who was trying to escape with a cold look in her eyes. Chapter 50-35. With Yi Qian's skills, the dagger that she threw out would definitely be fatal. However, this was a prisoner she was holding. She was not one of the guards, so the dagger that she threw out would not be able to take the prisoner's life. It would only be able to teach him a bloody lesson. The dagger that Yi Qian carried was an open-edge combat dagger. The tip of the dagger was sharp enough to kill wolves and tigers. She threw it with all her strength, and most of the dagger sank into the thigh of the prisoner who was trying to escape. Ah! The blood-curdling scream exploded. It shocked the passers-by so much that their scalps went numb. They panicked for no reason and subconsciously ran away. As for what exactly they had discovered, no one knew. It was best to escape first. The police officer holding the prisoner had already pounced on the prisoner who had not been obedient all the way. He used his elbow to hit the prisoner's head hard. The prisoner's thigh bone was split open, and he screamed even louder. Another police officer who rushed into the car was a local from Qingdi. He was a Tibetan police officer. When he saw his comrade lying in a pool of blood, he shouted, "Ada, Ada!" He threw himself beside his comrade who was lying in a pool of blood. His voice was as tense as a spring that was stretched to its limit and could break at any time. "Hang in there. We're going to hospital. We're going to hospital now." The police officer named Ada opened his mouth. A mouthful of blood gushed out from his mouth and nose. "Go after him. Go after him." I've already gone after him. We're going to the hospital now. Believe in my comrade. He's a special forces soldier. He'll definitely be able to catch the prisoner." Yi Qian answered first to reassure the middle-aged police officer who was still thinking about chasing the prisoner, even though his life was at stake. When he heard that a special forces soldier was going after the escaped prisoner, Ada's tense chest heaved a sigh of relief. He instantly relaxed. When Yi Qian saw this, the hand that was pressing on his neck trembled violently. "Brother Tsiwang, Tsiwang," Ada said to his colleague. His every word was laced with blood. Even the roots of his teeth were stained with blood. He was concerned about whether his old colleague, Daong Tsiwang, who had suddenly collapsed, was safe. Okay, don't say anything. Brother C.I. Wang is doing well. I'll drive to the hospital now." The moment she turned around, the police officer looked behind the young female soldier with trembling eyes. That look made Yi Jian's heart ache and her eyes turned bloodshot. Yi Jian let out a sorrowful cry that made her heart ache. He was suppressing the grief in his heart. His chest was trembling so much that Yi Qian wondered if his heart, which had endured the sacrifice of his comrades, would burst out of his chest in the next second. Yi Qian had experienced the heart-wrenching pain of losing a comrade before. Daong Tsiwang, the big brother of the station, was lying motionless at the back. His face was covered with a camouflage uniform with missing sleeves. He stopped himself from rushing over to see if his comrade was okay. He turned around and rushed out of the car to drag the prisoner who was still screaming into the car. He then handcuffed the prisoner's hands inside the car. "Duoji, watch him." The police officer who locked up the criminal gritted his teeth and growled at the police officer who was holding the criminal. "Keep an eye on him." The police officer who was holding the criminal, Duoji, nodded. "Okay, you drive. I'll keep an eye on him." The two police officers did not panic when they saw their comrade covered in blood. One of them drove, while the other looked after the dead prisoner. They quickly divided the work. With the young female soldier helping their comrade to stop the bleeding, they were very relieved. The police officer who was holding the criminal, Duoji, could finally take a look at Ada, who was lying in a pool of blood. He then looked at his big brother, Daong Tsiwang, whose face was covered with a camouflage uniform. Grief flooded over him like a tidal wave that had broken through a dam. Chapter 5036. His comrade was sacrificed, but the prisoner was still laughing. Duoji's heart was filled with anger, and he kicked the prisoner who was still screaming. "Jatsomu, you're asking for it." He kicked the prisoner's injured leg, and the prisoner fell to the ground. Because his hands were cuffed, he could not touch the ground, so he was suspended in the air. This was a prisoner whose hands were stained with human lives. Even if he screamed in pain, it could not hide the cruelty in his eyes. He saw the policeman lying in a pool of blood in front of him, and his mouth suddenly cracked into a cruel smile. "Dead? Really dead? Good death. Good death. He still wants to take us back. Ha ha ha, he's not that lucky." The policeman who was holding him down looked ruthless. With bloodshot eyes, he lifted his leg again and kicked the prisoner's chest. "Shut up." The prisoner coughed violently and laughed crazily. "Ah, ha ha, he's not that lucky. He's not that lucky." He was beaten until he vomited a mouthful of blood and fainted from the pain. Only then did he stop. After the prisoner fainted, the policeman, Duoji, rushed to the front seat. His hands trembled as he took off the camouflage jacket that covered his colleague's face, who was also the leader of the station, Daong Tsiwang. Yi Qian had helped Daong Tsiwang up from the car and buckled him with a seatbelt to prevent him from falling again. He also covered Daong Tsiwang's face with the sleeveless camouflage jacket as a sign of respect for the deceased. After the jacket was removed, Duoji saw that the leader, who had already left, had his right hand pressed against his chest. He looked like he was in pain, and his eyes were bloodshot from exhaustion. His lips were abnormally purple, but because his body had not yet stiffened, his lips had not turned white, but his face was gray and leaden. Yi Qian, whose hands were stained with blood, looked away after a glance. The policeman who fell should have died suddenly. To be precise, he died suddenly from exhaustion. The car had already started, and the policeman who was driving turned on the siren and asked the cars in front to move away. He drove to the nearest hospital at the fastest speed. Yi Qian, whose hands were stained with blood, kept pressing on the neck of the policeman. Ada, whose qi and blood were getting worse, and his lips were getting paler and paler. "Hold on. We're driving to the hospital now. Hold on." Police officer Ada should know that he did not have much time left. He forced a smile. He wanted to smile at Yi Qian to express his gratitude. "You're welcome. It's what I should do." Yi Qian understood what he was trying to say. She curled her lips into a reassuring smile. "Everything will be fine. Everything will be fine." Officer Duo Ji, who was suppressing his grief, covered his brother Daong Siwang's face with his camouflage jacket again. He wanted to take off his police uniform jacket, but he was afraid that his colleague, Ada, whose fate was unknown, would know that Brother Siwang had left and become agitated, so he put on Yi Qian's jacket again. Prisoner Jia Somu fainted. Duo Ji, who was grieving, crawled to his colleague, Ada's side. This was a 7-seater MPV, which was not used to transport prisoners. They had borrowed it from the hospital at the last minute. The police and the prisoner were in the same space, which gave the escaped prisoner a chance to attack. Duo Ji, who had crawled over, held on to Ada's cold fingers. Ada, hold on. You'll be fine. You'll be fine." He was not speaking Mandarin, but Tibetan. Police officer Ada smiled. He could not hold on any longer. Although he could not bear to leave, wanted to live well, and wanted to see the sun rise tomorrow, he knew that he could not do it. He knew that he did not even have the strength to hold on to Duo Ji's hands. He knew that he was going to die. Chapter 50:37. Looking at Ada's pale face, Yi Qian's voice tightened as she questioned Duo Ji, who was gasping for breath. "Why did you stop midway when you were escorting a felon? Why did you bring a felon out of the car? Why did the escaped felon have a weapon in his hand?" According to the rules, Yi Qian had no right to ask. However, when she saw the police officer, Daong Siwang, lying in a pool of blood, she couldn't help but ask. His questioning voice was extremely harsh, with the momentum of a golden spear. Duo Ji choked and was about to explain when Ada spoke. His voice was so weak that it sounded like he could die at any moment. "Siwang, big brother suddenly fell ill. I tried to save him. Wugan, sneak attack from behind. Throat slit. Murder weapon, plastic piece. Hospital, someone helped him." It wasn't Tibetan, but common language. He didn't avoid the young female soldier who helped them. He wanted Yi Qian to hear it. This was an answer to Yi Qian's question. He explained to Yi Qian that it had nothing to do with his colleagues, Ada and Ping Tso. The escaped felon had a plastic piece that was sharp enough to slit the throat. There was someone in the hospital who helped the felon. The police officer, Daong Siwang, suddenly fell ill. Duo Ji, who was in custody, tried to save him, but the felon slit his throat instead. This meant that the felon was skilled. Yi Qian looked down to hide the haze in his eyes. "Captain Xia, you have to be careful." Ada, who was speaking weakly, spat out blood again. Duo Ji shouted at Ping Tso, who was driving, "Drive faster, drive faster." The Tibetan man didn't cry easily. At this moment, tears and screams flew everywhere. Duo Ji wasn't young anymore. He was in his early 30s. The UV rays in the highlands were strong, so Duo Ji looked like he was in his 40s. One of his comrades was sacrificed, and the other's life was uncertain. This made the Tibetan man look much older. The police siren blared all the way. The police officer driving the car accelerated to 180 kilometers per hour and headed towards the small county town that was more than 80 kilometers away. At that time, many places in the northwest Gobi Desert had no mobile network signal. Even if he carried a cell phone with him, it would show the word no service. Yi Qian kept his cell phone within his line of sight, waiting for a signal to appear, and immediately dialed the number. Police cars were equipped with satellite phones, but this was not a police car, but a civilian car. When the incident happened, there was no way to contact the outside immediately because there was no signal at all. The only satellite phone that was used for emergency communication was also taken away by the escaped prisoners. I should have borrowed a landline in the service area, Yi Jian thought to herself. Then she frowned. There was no time to borrow a landline. The best choice was to drive to the hospital as fast as possible. She kept her hand on Ada's neck and did not dare to let go. Duoji also kept staring at Yi Qian's phone until the vertical bar that represented the signal appeared. There was only a 2-grid signal, but it was enough to make Doji overjoyed. He dialed the 120 emergency number and asked the hospital to immediately arrange for personnel to be on standby. Then, he dialed the police station's number. Before he could finish explaining what had happened, the call was cut off. His phone once again indicated that there was no service and no internet. With no service and no internet, he couldn't even make an emergency call. Duoji, who was holding the phone tightly, was heaving up and down violently. He lowered his head and kept talking to his comrade, Ada, who was so weak that he couldn't open his eyes. Ada, hold on a little longer. Just a little longer. We're almost at the hospital. Don't sleep. Chapter 5038. Yi Qian, whose hands were stained with blood, looked at Ada, whose complexion was getting worse and worse. His heart sank. She couldn't hold on for much longer. This police officer on the front line couldn't hold on for much longer. Her life was slipping away at a speed she could see. Hearing his comrade encouraging him to persevere, after a while, Ada struggled to open his eyes that were about to close. He hummed softly as a response. Ada, who was trying his best to survive, knew that no matter how hard he tried, it would be futile. Duoji, who had been waiting for an answer, cried like a child when he heard this soft and inaudible voice. The Tibetan man with a broad back arched his back and sobbed beside his comrade. Ada, who closed his eyes tiredly, had tears flowing out from the corners of his eyes. He heard his comrade's sorrowful cries and heard his comrade's reluctance to part with him. He also knew that his elder brother, Daong Tsiwang, who had been silent all this while, had already passed away. His elder brother, who had suddenly fallen ill and could not be saved in time, had passed away. Ada, whose breathing was as weak as silk, wanted to take one last deep breath, and he did it. After taking a deep breath with much difficulty, he looked at the figure that had already doubled. His lips moved. Stop the car. Look. He wanted to see the blue sky again. He wanted to see the eagle flying above his head again. He wanted to be close to the land he loved deeply. He wanted to breathe in the cold wind from the snowy mountains for the last time. The car stopped. When Yi Qian got out of the car, her knees were so weak that she was about to fall. Her hand was still covering the police officer Ada's neck. She could not fall. If she fell, her hand would loosen. The police officers, Ping Qo and Duo Ji, carried Ada out of the car. They walked to the side of the road. Ping Qo sat down first. Ada sat down and leaned into his comrade's arms. Duo Ji knelt beside him and held Ada's hands tightly. Yi Qian also knelt. His hands never left Ada's neck. The wind blew from the mountains and blew across the highway. Even the wind was filled with sadness. Ada tried his best to open his eyes. He looked at the blue sky and wanted to see if there was an eagle flying past. The sky was so blue. When would the eagle fly over? The air was really good. There was the smell of the Gobi Desert and the coldness of the snow mountain. This was the last time Ada opened his eyes. The sunlight was so glaring that tears flowed out of his eyes. He tried his best to keep his eyes open and look, because this was the last time he would see sunlight. In less than a minute, Ada slowly closed his eyes. In the last moments of his life, he left behind his last words. Big Brother C.I. Wong. I I, Brother C.I. Wong and I, together, you guys, continue, 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 live, live. He didn't mention his family, only his comrades who had fought side by side with him. At the last moment of his life, he was most worried about his comrades. As for his family, he didn't even have time to leave behind his last words before he closed his eyes. Ada, Ada, my Ada. The Tibetan man cried out in pain. Ping Qo hugged the departing Ada tightly and cried loudly. Her sorrowful voice was enough to make the wind weep. Ada left. As a police officer, Ada left. Yi Qian slowly retracted his hand and stood up. His hand was trembling so badly that he didn't even have the strength to raise it up and send the deceased policeman off with a military salute. He looked down at his blood-stained hands. The blood had already dried and coagulated into brown blood clots. His palms, the back of his hands, and the seams of his hands were covered in brown blood. It was the blood that represented life. Now, it had already dried up. Chapter 5039. The blood had dried up, and police officer Ada had left. It was an era of peace. Peace belonged only to the people, not to the police, not to the soldiers, and not to the frontline workers who fought against all criminals. They had to bear the price of peace. The photos they took on the first day they put on their uniforms would be the photos of their sacrifice in the morning hall. The true era of peace only belonged to the common people. The common people who lived in the era of peace actually had piles of bones beneath their feet. They were the bones of martyrs who sacrificed their lives in exchange for the people to live in peace. Yi Qian closed her eyes. She really didn't have the strength to raise her arms to salute. Her legs, which suddenly lost the strength to stand, fell heavily on the ground filled with gravel. She knelt to send off police officer Ada, who had sacrificed himself. Ada, Ada! Ada's comrade was in pain. Her tears splattered on the ground, leaving little tear stains. Police officer Ada had sacrificed himself. Police officer Deong Siwang had sacrificed himself. In one day, 2 frontline police officers had sacrificed themselves in a county police station. The director of the police station received a call that was suddenly cut off. No matter how he called, he couldn't contact them. The director panicked and personally led several police officers out. In a small county, 3 police cars blared their sirens and sped out of the county. Duo-ji told the director that there was a situation on their side. The felon Gonganimbu had escaped, and Ada was injured. Then the call was cut off, and they couldn't contact them anymore. Why did the felon Gonganimbu escape? They had just caught him and hadn't brought him back to the station. How did he escape? The panicking director sat in the car with a gloomy face. From time to time, he would use his phone to call the number that had contacted him 5 minutes ago. No matter how hard he tried, there was no way to contact him. He kept telling him that the number was temporarily unavailable. The director was so anxious that he wanted to throw his phone away. In 2003 and 2004, there were still many villages in the mainland with no mobile network signal, let alone remote areas like the Northwest and the Highlands. Ping Qo carried his comrade Ada, who was no longer breathing, into the car and carefully placed him on the seat next to Deong Siwang. He and Duo-ji sat in the back, their hands tightly holding the shoulders of their fallen comrade. Yi Qian became the driver. Ping Qo and Duo-ji told Yi Qian that they had to turn back to the service area. They needed to capture the escaped felon, Gonganimbu. Yi Qian, who was worried about Xia Jinyuan, thought for a while before nodding in agreement. She actually wanted to send the 2 policemen back to their workplace first. Brother Ada and Brother C.I. Wong have already left. Before they left, they were still thinking about the escaped prisoners. We have to capture the prisoners so that Brother Ada and Brother C.I. Wong can leave in peace. This is their last wish. We have to fulfill it. We have to fulfill it. Duo-ji's explanation made Yi Qian change his mind. He nodded and agreed to turn around. In the car, Yi Qian finally realized why they didn't use the vehicle used to detain criminals. The 3 policemen, Ada, Ping Qo, and Duo-ji, originally only wanted to escort the prisoner So Mu to the big hospital in the city. Half a month ago, Daong Tsiwang and several other colleagues in the city arrested a criminal and brought him to justice. Because they had some work to do at the police station in the city, they did not return to the work unit with their colleagues at night. In the morning, the 45-year-old Daong Tsiwang, who had stayed up all night to work until his eyes were bleeding, decided to meet up with them at the hospital. He also wanted to get his eyes checked. He planned to prescribe some medicine and bring it back to the station. They were in a small county and could not compare to the big hospitals in the city. Chapter 5040. Who knew that before he could find a doctor to check his eyes, he would see the fugitive felon Gonganingbu pass by with a bag of medicine in his hand. Daong Tsiwang immediately contacted his colleague Ada. Suedo Oji and Ping Qo would guard Jat Somu, who was in the hospital, while he and Ada would pin Gonganingbu down in the hospital. Daong Tsiwang had been in charge of capturing Gonganingbu. Now that he had finally caught him, he didn't care that he hadn't rested for several days. It turned out that the police car that brought Jat Somu to the hospital was just a car. Gonganingbu couldn't sit in it, so the four of them borrowed a car and rushed back to the police station with Jat Somu. They rushed back to the police station immediately instead of borrowing a car from the local police station because they could borrow a car immediately. There was no need to trouble the local police station, so they rushed back to the station as soon as possible. It was normal for the four of them to guard two felons. They informed their colleagues in the local police station to check on the fugitives' movements in Gonganingbu. The four of them immediately drove out of the city with the two felons. To prevent any accidents from happening, they returned to the station without even taking Jat Somu's medical results. They didn't expect something to happen halfway. Jat Somu said that he had abdominal cramps and needed to get out of the car. Jat Somu didn't look well at that time, and he was out of the hospital. Ping Qo and Duo Ji escorted Jat Somu out of the car. Ada and Daong Tsiwang stayed in the car to watch over Gonganingbu, whose hands and feet were handcuffed. Gonganingbu was wearing the prison uniform that Jat Somu had changed into. They didn't expect Daong Tsiwang, who had been working nonstop, to suddenly fall ill. Ada tried to save him, but they didn't expect Gonganingbu to open the handcuffs and cut Ada's carotid artery with a thin but sharp piece of plastic when Ada bent down to save him. After Gonganingbu was caught, they immediately searched him and took away all the items that they thought were dangerous. As for the piece of plastic, Ada, who was sacrificed, suspected that someone threw it to Gonganingbu when they borrowed the car. It was also possible that Gonganingbu was hiding it somewhere, but they didn't find it. As for how the whole process had happened, they would have to capture Gonganingbu and interrogate him. Ping Qo and Duo Ji hit their heads with one hand countless times when they were talking. Unfortunately, there was no regret in this world, and things happened so coincidentally. There was no problem with the three of them escorting a felon to the hospital for treatment. The eldest brother, Daong Tsiwang, caught the fugitive and rushed back to the station. There was no problem. They had made all the necessary arrangements, but they didn't take into account that their health would be affected. Daong Tsiwang, who had died suddenly, did not expect that he, who was known as the Iron Man, would suddenly suffer a myocardial infarction. He did not have time to say anything before he collapsed while escorting the criminal. He also did not expect that the felon, Gonganingbu, had the ability to unlock his handcuffs. No other police officer would have thought of this. Gonganingbu was a murderer and a crazed poacher. 5 years ago, he first hunted the Tibetan antelope and other protected animals in the no man's land. 2 years ago, he cruelly killed 3 volunteers who protected the animals in the no man's land. Then, he relied on his cunning to escape until now. He didn't panic, says Tsiwang. Didn't panics. Didn't. Jesus. Didn't panicked when he ran when when he was TSS. Ada of Tsiwang. He's S. Chapter 5041. Gonganingbu confirmed that he needed a car. Only by hijacking a car would he be able to shake off the soldiers who were hot on his heels. Damn it! He cursed under his breath and quickly took off his prison uniform. After taking it off, he crumpled it into a ball and threw it out of the road. Running in a prison uniform was tantamount to telling passing cars that he was a criminal. No car would stop for a criminal. The road was only two-lane and two-way. Fortunately, the width of the road was wide enough. In addition, the tourism in the Northwest Gobi was still in its infancy, so there were relatively few self-driving tour vehicles passing by. Most of them were construction vehicles for the construction of the Northwest, such as pickup trucks, vans, mini cars, trucks, and other vehicles. These vehicles did not travel fast. With Ganganimbo's speed, he could climb up while the drivers were not paying attention. After taking off his prison uniform, Ganganimbo began to look for a vehicle that he could climb up smoothly. A car passed by. He glanced at it and looked away. The back of the car was short and smooth. There was no tool for him to hold on to with both hands, so it was not within his scope of choice. Ganganimbo, who had a faint greenish-black scar on his left cheek and a typical reddish-black skin tone of the highlands, looked back again. Seeing that the soldier who was hot on his heels seemed to be speeding up again, Ganganimbo gritted his teeth fiercely. He had run into a tough nut to crack. He had been running fast since he was young. In addition, he had been chasing Tibetan antelopes almost every day during his years of hunting in the no-man's land. As long as he started running, he could immediately leave the people behind him in the dust. For this reason, he had become a hunter who hunted Tibetan antelopes. Later, when he was wanted by the police, he had relied on his running speed to escape from Deng Tsuong and the others several times. He had never failed. This time, however, he was in danger. He did not expect that the soldier who was hot on his heels was also a long-distance runner. Ganganimbo clenched his fists. His eyes were even colder and fiercer. Killing one was killing. Killing two was also killing. He had already killed 3, so he did not care about killing one more. As long as the other party caught up to him, he would dare to kill them. Ganganimbo's calmness was also beyond Xia Jinyuan's expectations. When a criminal realized that he was being chased by the police and soldiers, he would more or less panic, but Gongan Ningbu was not. He was calmly analyzing how he could escape from the soldiers chasing after him. He was cunning, bold, and careful. Otherwise, he wouldn't have the guts to appear in a big hospital in the city. A person who even dared to kill a police officer could not be expected to have any mercy in his heart. Xia Jinyuan did not know what had happened in the car, but he could guess that something big must have happened. Otherwise, the police in the car would not have watched the criminal escape without giving chase. As public officials, they could not choose to watch the prisoner's escape. Since he couldn't, then it meant that something had happened to the police in the car, and it was a big deal. They were either seriously injured or dead. Xia Jinyuan had stayed in the highlands in Tibet before, so he knew that the police in these places were tough. When facing criminals, even if they were injured and bleeding from their wounds, as long as they still had a breath to run, they would not hesitate to charge forward, disregard their own lives, and chase after the criminals until they were arrested and brought to justice. Now, he had been chasing for nearly 10 minutes, but no police came to help. Xia Jinyuan looked at the figure in front of him who was running as fast as a beast. There was a bloodthirsty look in his dark eyes. Chapter 5042. 10 minutes. He had been chasing the prisoner for 10 minutes, but there were still no police officers chasing after him. Xia Jinyuan had a very, very bad premonition. A jeep with a luggage rack roared past him. Xia Jinyuan, who was running in front, suddenly saw the window of the jeep roll down, and a man's arm stretched out, as if he had expected something. Xia Jinyuan, who reacted quickly, shouted, "Take your hand back." He shouted so loudly that the 4 young men and women in the jeep, including the driver, heard him. The young man who had stretched out his arm continued to stretch it out and laughed wantonly. "Damn it, I wanted to give him a high five, but he actually asked me to take my hand back. You're sitting in the car while he's running on the road, and you still want to give him a high five? What high five? High five?" The young man who was driving laughed loudly. The sunlight shone through the window, and a few bright rays of light appeared beside his ears. It was the light from the diamonds on his ear studs, 2 in his right ear, and 3 in his left ear. The 4 young men were only 21 or 22 years old, and they were at the age where they could squander freely. They had the capital to squander and sufficient financial and material resources to support their squandering. Oh, F***, there's someone running in front. Do you want to give him a high five? The journey was too boring, so they wanted to find something to do. They didn't care if it was exciting or dangerous. As long as they wanted to do it, they would do it. They didn't think that there would be danger, so they were purely looking for something to do. F***, he's running like a rabbit. I'll get out of the car and give him a high five. The young man who stretched out his arm touched his forehead with one hand and combed his hair behind his head. His actions were natural and unrestrained, and he had the intention to make his hair look handsome. The young girl who was sitting next to him and hugging a pillow laughed until she bent over. Her long yellow hair hung over her shoulders, and her face with heavy makeup could be vaguely seen. There was also a touch of bright red across her face, which was the color of her lips. The girl straightened her back and raised her hand to comb her hair. Compared to the young man's handsomeness, the girl's actions were more charming. Her bright red lips curled up, and she giggled. Each of you is more boring than the other. I've been driving for 6 hours. I'm so F***ing bored that my balls are moldy. Boys, stop the car. I'm going to give you a high five. You tramp, do you dare to get out of the car and call us Uncle Rabbit in front of others? The young man driving the car laughed even louder. If you dare to call us that, I'll be your grandson for a day. Oh, F***, let's do it. Stop the car. Withdrawing his hand from the car, the young man, who was jokingly called Wastrel by his friends, patted the headrest of the driver's seat. Damn it, I'm waiting for you to be my grandson for a day. Inside the car, the 2 girls were laughing so hard that their giggles echoed in the car. When Xia Jinyuan saw the arm that had been stretched out outside the car retract, he felt relieved. However, the speeding Jeep came to an emergency stop with a sharp squeak. All 4 of them, including the driver, fell forward due to inertia. Coquettish and coarse curses could be heard as the car door opened. Drive, drive, there are murderers ahead. Cursing in his heart, Xia Jinyuan shouted so loudly that the blue veins on his neck appeared. He was less than 30 meters away from the fugitive, and he was using all his strength to close the distance bit by bit. However, the sudden change made Xia Jinyuan unable to stop it, even though he had a premonition. Chapter 5043. The car door opened, but the engine was not turned off. The young man who made the bet only opened the car door. Gong'an Ningbo, who was as strong as a leopard, grabbed the man's wrist and pulled him out of the car. At the same time, he got into the car himself. Bam! The car door was closed, and the window was rolled down. He was already in the car. The young man who was pulled out by Gong'an Ningbo was caught off guard. He lost his balance and fell off the road. As he fell, he screamed, "Oh, F***, oh, F***." Obviously, he had no idea what had happened or what might happen next. He was lucky to be pulled out of the car. In the car, the young driver cursed, "Oh, F***, you mother f***er. Are you crazy?" Before he could finish his sentence, he was so shocked by the scene in the back seat that he almost jumped. The young girl in the back seat slammed her head against the car door. The force of the impact was so strong that it made a dull sound. She was seeing stars and seeing stars. Drive, or I'll kill her. Everything happened so suddenly that the dizzy young girl in the back seat could not react in time. The young man driving did not react in time either. The young girl in the passenger seat was watching, but the scene in front of her was so fast that the smile on her face froze. She saw the man who rushed into the car inexplicably with something in his hand. He cut her good friend's neck, and it was bleeding. "Ah!" she screamed. The scream came from the car. Xia Jinyuan, who was sprinting 100 meters, grabbed the door lock and slammed his elbow against the window that was already closed by Gong'an Ningbo. The window did not move at all. Xia Jinyuan raised his hand and slammed it again. The force was so strong that Gong'an Ningbo, who was already in the car, had a cold look in his eyes. F asterisk CK. He's so difficult to deal with. His voice was hoarse and cold. Drive. Hurry. He pushed the plastic piece in his hand into the neck of the girl who was being held hostage. The frightened girl screamed, and the girl in the front seat also screamed. The young man who had fallen head first into the bushes outside the road, his palms and face scratched by the thorny bushes, was still confused. When he stood still, he saw a man in camouflage using his elbow to hit the car window. That strength was definitely real. Hey! As soon as he opened his mouth, the car suddenly rushed forward. The young man, with a few scratches on his face, widened his eyes. OF asterisk CK. Is this AF asterisk King Blockbuster? He saw the man in camouflage hanging on to the lock handle of the car. Even when the soles of his feet rubbed against the asphalt, he didn't let go. His whole body was hanging like that, as if he was watching a porn film. The young man was dumbfounded. Inside the car, Ganganimbu pressed the thin and sharp piece of plastic against the neck of the young girl in the back seat. The blood that flowed out dyed the piece of plastic that had already coagulated. This piece of plastic was given to Ganganin by a foreign merchant. He did not know what it was made of. It looked like plastic, but at the same time it was not. In the past, he had used this thin piece of plastic to cut off bits and pieces of Tibetan antelopes' horns, or the edges of their fur. Konganingpo had used this thin piece of plastic to deal with who knew how many antelopes he had killed, and later on he had used it to kill people. 10 minutes ago, he used it to kill a police officer. How many more should he kill today? He didn't find it troublesome at all. Chapter 5044. The young driver's hands and feet were trembling. He quickly glanced at the rearview mirror and met a pair of malicious eyes. The young man's hands trembled violently. Bro, you want to rob me, right? I have money. Bro, please be merciful. Don't hurt me. Ganganimbu ignored him. His malicious gaze was fixed on the young soldier who dared to run after the car, who was still clutching the door handle with both hands. He grinned, and his smile was so cold that it made people's hair stand on end. He opened his mouth, and even the people in the car could not understand what he said. Xia Jinyuan understood. The criminal in the car said to him, "Either I drag you to death, or I kill her." She pointed at the hostage. There were 3 hostages in the car. The other 2 had a chance to escape, but the hostage who had been kidnapped had a slim chance of escaping. Moreover, she was a woman, so her chance of escaping was almost 0. Xia Jinyuan didn't doubt the sincerity of a criminal who was crazy enough to kill a police officer. If he said he would kill the hostage, he would definitely do it. Xia Jinyuan, who had no traction, hugged his head tightly. The huge inertia caused him to tumble. Xia Jinyuan, who was skilled in martial arts, didn't let himself fall. He covered his head and rolled several times. Other than the abrasion on his elbows and knees, he didn't hurt himself. The young man who was pulled out of the car for no reason finally realized that something was wrong. Also, damn it, he was here, and the car ran away. Oh, F asterisk CK, stop. I haven't gotten in the car yet. Wang Qian, you bastard, stop the car. The young man, who was wearing a black jacket, camel-colored overalls, and a pair of hiking shoes, ran wildly. 2 silver chains dangled from both sides of his sternum. As he ran, there was a clattering sound that sounded like keys colliding. He ran until he was in front of Xia Jinyuan. Knowing that he couldn't catch up with the car, the young man stopped and stretched out his hand to Xia Jinyuan. Bro, what were you guys doing just now? It was like a movie. I was excited, but you really don't want to live anymore. The car has already started, and you still don't let go? Are you waiting to be pressed down? It can't be on purpose, right? That friend of yours is really F asterisk King sick. He pulled me out of the car and rushed up by himself. That dog of mine is also F asterisk King retarded. He actually left me behind and drove away by himself. Oh, F asterisk CK. How do I chase after him? Do you have any moves? Are you all right? Your bones aren't broken, right? Do you need me to help you up? F asterisk CK. Why did you run away just now? You ran faster than a rabbit. Young people were talkative, but they weren't bad people. They even knew to ask if Xia Jinyuan was hurt. Xia Jinyuan, who was gasping for breath, stood up with one hand on the ground. As soon as he stood up, his height of more than 1.8 meters instantly outshone the young man, who was about 1.75 meters tall. The talkative young man muttered, F***CK, you're so damn tall. What the hell did you eat? Just now I was chasing a felon. His hands are stained with human lives. 16 minutes ago, he might have killed 1 or 2 police officers. I was only about 140 meters away from him at that time. Give me about 5 to 8 minutes to catch up with him. As for you, you stretched out your hand and finally stopped the car. The felon escaped and took your friend away. Now, I need to stop a car and catch up with him. Xia Jinyuan didn't want to hide anything from this young man who was looking for trouble and purely asking for a lesson. He was at least 20 years old. Did he still think that he was 2 years old? The young man was speechless. His eyes were about to fall out of their sockets. Was he trying to scare him? Chapter 5045. Knowing that he had provoked a murderer and that the murderer had kidnapped his good friend and escaped, the young man was so shocked that he forgot to be afraid. No. It can't be. T. It must be a lie. It can't be that coincidental. Is he really a serious murderer? It can't be that he deliberately lied to me to scare me, right? That's possible. But shouldn't serious murderers be handcuffed? Why doesn't the one I saw look like one? What should we do now? Chase after him? The young man stuttered. He didn't know what to do next. Although he was suspicious, he was still afraid. He was 21 years old, came from a wealthy family, and was born and raised in a greenhouse. He would usually fight and flaunt his superiority, but he didn't dare to risk his life. Cold sweat flowed down his forehead and stimulated the wound on the young man's face that was cut by the thorns. He couldn't help but suck in a breath of pain. Xia Jinyuan didn't have time to answer the young man's question. He took out his phone to contact Yi Qian. There was a weak signal near the service area, so he could make a call. He called while flagging down a car. The cars coming and going didn't stop because of this. Tourists who came to the Northwest were more or less in awe of this land, so they wouldn't casually stop to pick up a stranger. Only the young man in front of him would do such a boring and dangerous thing. 2 cars sped past without stopping. The young man cursed again and fumbled in the pockets of his pants. Just as his hand touched the 2 back pockets of his jeans, the young soldier who was beside him just now suddenly ran to the service area. Hey. The young man held his wallet and shouted at the back of the running soldier. F***CK, what should I do? He didn't know if Xia Jinyuan heard him, but the young man saw that he didn't stop and didn't look back, so he simply ran after him. His good friend was kidnapped, so he could only rely on this young soldier. Xia Jinyuan ran back to the service area as fast as he could and found the military jeep that they drove all the way from the Gobi Desert. He opened the door, got in, started the car, and reversed out. He was so fast that the wheels spun and dust was blown to one side by the wind. The tourists who were resting by the side were amazed. This technique was amazing. Xia Jinyuan picked up the young man, who was still desperately running towards the service area. What's the license plate number? He asked coldly. His voice was so deep that it was as if he was suppressing a terrifying storm. The young man, who was still gasping for air, didn't even care that he couldn't catch his breath and hurriedly reported it. After that, Xia Jinyuan repeated it again. Only then did the young man notice that the soldier driving the car was holding a handheld communicator in his hand. There was a satellite communication system in the car. Even if they entered an uninhabited area, they could still contact the outside world. Soon, the director of a county police station, who was rushing out of the city, received an even worse piece of news from the army. The fugitive Gong'an Ningbo had hijacked a jeep with 3 hostages and was heading toward the city center. The young man sitting at the back was now completely convinced that they had really provoked a murderer. Out of boredom, he provoked a murderer. Then, out of boredom, he got out of the car because of a bet. In the end, he was dragged out of the car by the criminal. Then, he kidnapped his friend and ran away. Chapter 5046. At this point, The young man was already cursing in his heart. F***ck, that son of a b***tch. All kinds of vulgarities exploded in his heart, but he did not dare to curse out loud. The young soldier sitting next to him was too scary. He was so scared that he wanted to go home and look for his mother. Xia Jinyuan did not care whether the boy was scared or not. He first asked about the situation of the hijacked vehicle, especially the oil condition. After learning that they had filled up the server and left, Xia Jinyuan punched the center of the steering wheel. The car honked, and in the blink of an eye, it overtook a construction truck. A full tank of oil was enough for Gongganan to drive for hundreds of kilometers. The boy, who was almost scared to death, saw Xia Jinyuan suddenly hit the center of the steering wheel and honked. His thin body trembled violently like a bird in the wind and rain. Xia Jinyuan immediately reported the car condition information to the Pioneer Battalion, and the Pioneer Battalion reported it to the Shiji City Police. Fortunately, with Xia Jinyuan and Yi Qian's help, the police were not blinded. The boy, who was trembling in fear, straightened his back again. He cursed in his heart to give himself courage and hide the fear in his heart. At this moment, his hand was tightly gripping the tab on the roof of the car. He glanced at the young soldier sitting in front of him from time to time. He wanted to say something to the young soldier, but the young soldier's aura was so frightening that it made it difficult for him to breathe. He did not have the courage to speak. But if he did not speak, he would be even more panicked and scared. Xia Jinyuan dialed Yi Qian's cell phone number, but the call could not be connected. He narrowed his eyes and immediately hung up the phone. He pressed the accelerator, and the car sped forward like an arrow. He put his cell phone in his pocket and gripped the steering wheel tightly with both hands. He drove at 180 kilometers per hour and headed towards Shiji City along National Highway 15. At the same time, he had already familiarized himself with the basic information of the 3 hostages from the young man. They were all rich kids from Suzhou and Hangzhou. They studied in the capital and sneaked out to have fun in the name of internship when they entered their 4th year. They had just arrived in the Northwest for 2 days and were preparing to go on a tour. In the end, they got themselves into trouble because of boredom. When a satellite communication system in the car received a call from the Pioneer Battalion, Company Commander Sun told Xia Jinyuan that a policeman had died of myocardial infarction, and another policeman had his throat slit by a fugitive felon. The boy sitting in the back was already scared enough, and now he was so scared that he had to pee. Kill, 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 kill. Really, 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 really killed. He even killed a police officer. Throat cut. Brother, how the F***ck would I know that this grandson is a felon? The word felon isn't written on his body. If we knew, we wouldn't have dared to get off the car. We would have run as far as we could. You told us not to get off the car. Brother, we really didn't hear you. Brother, I was wrong. Don't be angry. Let's think about how to save my 3 friends. The 21-year-old young man cried out loud. If he had known, he definitely wouldn't have made the bet and wouldn't have gotten out of the car. In the blink of an eye, he had provoked a fugitive felon who even dared to kill a policeman. Hearing the crying, Xia Jinyuan glanced at the rearview mirror. He saw the boy crying until his face was covered in snot and tears. He clenched his teeth and said in a cold voice, "Although they were kidnapped, it doesn't mean that their lives are in danger. The felon needs to escape. Bringing 3 hostages at once will drag him down. Maybe he will let your friends get off the car midway." His words probably had a comforting effect. The young man, who was about to cry himself silly, said, "Really? Will that bastard really let my friends get off the car?" Chapter 5047. At this moment, the boy was no longer as high-spirited as he had been in the car. He looked like a frosted eggplant, listless and listless. Then he slapped himself hard and sobbed. "I really didn't know something was going to happen. If I knew, I wouldn't have gotten out of the car." He slapped himself hard enough that a red handprint appeared on his cheek. Hearing his words, Xia Jinyuan's cold expression softened a little. "Maybe, from now on, you can pay attention to both sides of the highway to see if there are any signs of your friends." Seeing that the boy had slapped himself, Xia Jinyuan was not in the mood to blame the boy for being insensible. Didn't he hear my reminder? Was he pointing his middle finger at air? She dialed Yi Qian's cell phone again. This time the call went through. Yi Qian glanced at the caller ID and immediately picked up the call. Captain Xia, we're on our way back and have arrived at the service station. 2 police officers were killed in the car, and there are 2 more accompanying them. I'll drive. She quickly told Xia Jinyuan about her situation, and Xia Jinyuan also told Yi Qian about his situation. Yi Qian, who was driving, heard that the fugitive had taken 3 hostages and was heading in the direction of West Jining. Yi Qian's heart sank. This was a fugitive who dared to kill police officers. Killing a few more hostages was nothing to him. In the car, Ping Qo and Duo Ji heard this, and both of them said something Tibetan at the same time. Yi Qian did not know what they meant, but he knew it was not a good thing. I'm going at 180 kilometers per hour now. I haven't found any hijacked vehicles yet. I'll speed up to 240 kilometers per hour. Follow me closely. You don't have to rush to catch up with me. The military jeep had been modified to a certain extent. Yi Qian was driving a civilian 7-seater MPV, so he could only go up to 200 kilometers per hour at most. He could not go any faster. The 2 of them had a short conversation and knew each other's situation. They were calmer when chasing after the fugitive. Due to the escape of the wanted criminal Gonganimbu from Sijanin and the kidnapping of 3 hostages, the entire city's police force was mobilized. Sirens blared all over the city as hundreds of police officers were mobilized. The plan on how to rescue the hostages was urgently launched. As for the location of the vehicle, it was currently unobtainable. The transportation department pulled out all the sky eyes on the entire Northwest Highway, starting with the service station as the starting point for a comprehensive inspection. Continuing ahead was Gansha County, which was also the county where Ping Tso, Duo Ji, and the 2 police officers who had been sacrificed had to reach. Behind them was Kesaji City, which was the provincial capital where Gongan Ningbo was captured. The incident happened at the service station in Lari Village, which was located on the 567 public road and 315 National Highway in Shiji City. It was about 400 kilometers away from the service station to Gansha County. The 2 sides were so far apart that no one could guarantee that Gongan Ningbo would not abandon the vehicle midway. Moreover, they all agreed that the possibility of him abandoning the vehicle midway was very high. Once they abandoned the vehicle midway, the chances of capturing Gongan Ningbo again would be slim. With his survival skills, he could easily survive for half a year or even longer if he entered the barren mountains of the Gobi Desert. This was a cruel and cunning person who did not have many requirements for survival. The possibility of him entering Shiji City is very low. There are about 560 kilometers between the service station in Lari Village and Shiji City. With Gongan Ningbo's cunning, it is impossible for him to drive all the way into Shiji City. Moreover, the wanted criminal must know that entering Shiji City is equivalent to walking right into a trap. The possibility of him abandoning the vehicle midway is 80%. It was not 80%, but 100%. The wanted criminal, Gongan Ningbo, had planned to abandon the vehicle midway and escape. He did not even consider entering Sijanin again. Chapter 5048. The possibility of abandoning the car was 100%. Then, would Gongan Ningbo take the hostages and enter the Gobi Mountains? There were 3 hostages in the car, 2 females and 1 male. The female hostages in the back seat were in serious danger. The male was the driver, so he was relatively safe. If the car was abandoned midway and the criminal intended to take the hostages into the mountains, the 2 female hostages would most likely be brutally killed by the criminal. The male hostages would most likely be taken into the mountains by the criminal. Since entering the mountains required a certain amount of physical strength, the male hostages would be the criminal's first choice. These were all the police's guesses and analyses. The actual situation was in the hands of the criminal. The cold-faced Shi Jining Public Security Bureau chief immediately contacted the military. No matter how many guesses and analyses the police had, there was only one best solution. Let the pursuing soldiers stop the criminal from abandoning the car and entering the mountains to ensure the safety of the 3 hostages in the car. They were patrolling traffic police on National Highway 315. The nearby traffic police also received instructions from the brigade and rushed to the service station of Lari Village. When they saw a car in front, they immediately used their horns to ask the car in front to move aside. The cars that heard the traffic police's instructions all moved aside, making the already sparse National Highway even smoother. Several police cars whizzed past, causing the drivers who were trying to move aside to wonder if something had happened in front. The car was going as fast as 240 kilometers per hour. Xia Jinyuan received the latest instructions. The Shijining Public Security Bureau chief hoped that he could stop the criminal Gong'an Ningbu from abandoning the car. At the same time, all of Gong'an Ningbu's personal information was given to him. The poacher in the no man's land had brutally killed 3 volunteers and a police officer. Now, he was very likely to kill the hostages. When the pale-faced boy heard that the felon who had kidnapped his good friend had killed 3 people, he immediately broke down and bit down on his arm. The force of his bite pierced through his clothes, and he was so vicious that he could bite off a piece of flesh from his arm. Xia Jinyuan had been paying attention to the boy's emotions. When he saw this, his eyes darkened slightly. He only said to the boy after the satellite communication was cut off, "For you, this is the best lesson. It will make you consider whether there will be consequences before you do anything in the future." In front, a silvery, gray Jeep appeared. It was the same color as the hijacked car. Xia Jinyuan's expression suddenly turned ruthless. He faintly curled the corners of his lips. "Sit tight, your car is right in front." The chase took 15 minutes, including the time it took for Xia Jinyuan to run back to the service station to get his car. The boy who had bitten his arm through his shirt, leaving deep teeth marks, looked up. "Brother, can I go down and help? I'm going to beat that bastard to death." "Little brother, even though he's a felon with several lives on his hands, you won't be able to escape punishment if you really beat him to death. It's a good thing to have a personality, but you can't be blindly impulsive lest you harm others and yourself." As soon as Xia Jinyuan said that, the boy behind him moved to the middle so that he could see the front clearly. When he saw the silver Jeep, he thought of his friends in the Jeep and how cruel the criminals were. The boy wiped away the tears on his face and said stubbornly, "I won't cause trouble for my brother. If you guys fight, I'll just help a little. He must have a knife or something in his hand. I can also warn my brother." The young boy's words reminded Xia Jinyuan of a past event related to Yi Qian. Not long after he met Yi Qian, he asked Yi Qian to sit in the car on a rainy night. Yi Qian said softly to him, "The relationship between the people and the people is as strong as water. Comrade soldiers, occasionally, as civilians, we can also be your support." Chapter 5049. Once upon a time, there was a brave girl who made him remember her like this. A hint of a smile flashed across his dark eyes as he said to the boy, "Thank you for your concern. When you get in the car later." He paused for a moment and looked at the target vehicle that was getting closer and closer. Xia Jinyuan asked him, "Do you know how to drive?" The young boy, who wanted to do his part to save his friends, nodded vigorously. Yes, I know how to drive. I drive better than Wang Qian. I'm braver than him." Xia Jinyuan sneered. Fortunately, Wang Qian was driving now. If the boy in front of him was driving, the target vehicle would probably have sped up, and he wouldn't have been able to catch up so quickly. There was one good thing about the chase on the Gobi Highway. There was only one road throughout the entire journey, and there wasn't even a turn. Even if the fugitive Ganganimbu hijacked a car, he could only keep driving forward. After a faint smile, Xia Jinyuan said, "Very good. After saving your 3 friends, you'll drive them away. Your 3 friends should be fine for now. He doesn't dare to kill the girl in the back seat now, and he needs Wang Qian to drive. If he kills the girl in the back seat, Wang Qian won't be able to drive properly. You don't have to worry about the girl in the front passenger seat. Ganganimbu can't be endangered her now. So, Don't be in a hurry to cry. Sit properly and don't cause trouble for me. Xia Jinyuan believed that young people, especially boys, needed to be brave. The young boy's reaction was very much in line with Xia Jinyuan's temper. Even if he knew that they were chasing a felon who had killed 4 people, he didn't think of getting out of the car to protect himself. He even wanted to get out of the car with him later to help. This was worthy of praise. Since he agreed to try his best to protect himself in case of an accident and put his own safety first, but he was the one who caused the trouble. When the accident happened, he became a coward who only cared about protecting himself and caused his friends to lose their lives. He really couldn't think highly of such a person. When a young boy heard this, he immediately patted his chest and promised, "Okay, brother, leave it to me. I'll definitely take them away." After that, he leaned over and asked anxiously, "What about you, brother? What will you do after we leave? Won't you come with us?" Xia Jinyuan shook his head. "My mission now is to capture the fugitive. Take good care of yourselves later." The target vehicle in front of him was getting closer and closer. It was so close that he could clearly see the taillights of the vehicle. The people in the vehicle should be able to see him as well. "Sit tight." After saying that, Xia Jinyuan increased the speed by 20 kilometers per hour, from 240 kilometers per hour to 260 kilometers per hour. The performance of military vehicles was far superior to that of ordinary jeeps. In addition, Xia Jinyuan was a member of the Special Forces, so his driving skills were top-notch, and he could completely control the speed. The hostage, Wang Qian, was sweating profusely as he drove the car. His driving skills were not very good. He had only gotten his driving license for a year and was still in the middle of it. Driving at 180 kilometers per hour was already his limit. At first, Gong Ningbu even threatened Wang Qian to drive at the highest speed. Wang Qian, who was so scared that his whole body was trembling, stepped on the brakes, and the car instantly went out of control and went off the S road. When Gong Ningbu saw this, he yelled at Wang Qian to drive properly. In return, Wang Qian cried and said that he could not drive fast. Therefore, it was fortunate that Wang Qian was the one driving. If it were a young man who knew how to drive, it would not be a problem for him to drive 2 or 3 times. It would take some time for Xia Jinyuan to chase after him. When the target vehicle was discovered, Xia Jinyuan immediately informed the Pioneer Battalion. When the Pioneer Battalion received the news from the front, they immediately maintained communication with the Shiji City Public Security Bureau. Chapter 5050. The Shiji City Public Security Bureau was informed that the pursuing soldiers had found the target vehicle and were waiting for time to rescue the hostages. At that moment, the leaders who had convened the emergency meeting heaved a sigh of relief. The criminals are extremely vicious. Please tell the soldiers to be careful and ensure their own safety. The Shiji City Public Security Bureau director's words were conveyed to Xia Jinyuan by the Pioneer Battalion. Xia Jinyuan was already close behind the target vehicle. Gongan Ningbo had already noticed the military green vehicle behind him. He immediately thought of the soldier who had chased him earlier. His face was distorted, and his facial features were distorted. He used both hands to strangle the neck of the girl in the back seat and shouted ferociously, "Step on the gas! Hurry, or I'll strangle her to death now." The girl who was choked struggled and could not breathe properly. She made a painful sound from her throat. Please, don't kill me. Please, she begged intermittently. Her face was getting paler and paler, and her lips were losing their color. The girl in the front passenger seat was trembling in fear. She did not dare to look. Wang Qian, who was also trembling, saw the girl who was about to be strangled to death. He was so scared that tears came out his eyes. He also begged, I'll speed up. Brother, please let her go. I beg you. You see, hurry up and beg brother. Ask him to let Tian go. Hurry up and beg brother." Wang Qian, whose knees were weak, sped up. He gritted his teeth and accelerated with a pale face. The car did not have any buffer and suddenly accelerated. Other than Wang Qian, the other 3 people in the car all fell forward. Xia Jinyuan, who was getting closer to the target vehicle, saw this and his heart sank. Oh no! Wang Qian was accelerating. The speed of the car exceeded the speed that Wang Qian could control. The whole car began to float. Something bad was going to happen. Brother, brother, hurry up, hurry up. The young man, sitting in the back, did not realize the seriousness of the situation. He saw the car approaching. It was getting closer. It was really getting closer. He would be able to save his friend very soon. Very soon, his heart was beating faster and faster. It was so fast that it felt like it was going to jump out of his chest. He clenched his fists so hard that his nails almost pierced his palms. Wang Qian sped up. Yu, who was sitting in the front passenger seat, was the most scared. The car was the first to float. Yu, who was so scared that she closed her eyes tightly and screamed. Ah! She was too scared, too scared. Yu escaped. Hurry up, and King jump out of the car. Wang Qian roared. He used too much force, and his neck turned red. Jump out. Quick. Mother Kerr. As long as one can escape, that counts. He couldn't escape, but Yu could. The girl was so scared that she did not hear what Wang Qian was shouting. Her voice was so loud that it covered Wang Qian's voice. When Gong'an Ningbo heard Wang Qian's roar, he straightened up and saw a heavy truck moving in front of him. He had completely turned into a lunatic. Suddenly, he broke into a grin. Good. Want to jump out of the car? I'll fulfill your wishes. He had originally planned to leave only the driver to drive for him, while the other two hostages would find an opportunity to get out of the car. But now, I'll let you get out of the car. The crazy Gong'an Ningbo narrowed his eyes. The moment the car passed the truck, he suddenly opened the rear door and cruelly pushed the girl who had a deep wound on her neck out of the car. Wang Qian was frantically honking his horn to signal the cars in front to move away. He had no time to pay attention to the cars behind him. Yu's unwillingness to cooperate made him realize that they were in danger. He had to think of a way. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.